This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Calling to order the meeting of the Southampton Select Board for February 18th, 2025 at 6 o'clock. If we could first stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. No flag right here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Select board here. I'm hoping John is going to join us so that we will be a complete select board. And in a bit, we will have the rest of the finance committee join us whenever they come in. We're going to do some budget hearings, but we've got a first set of agenda items before the budget hearings start for the Council on Aging and the Police Department tonight. And so let us start. Anybody here for Citizen Speak? Anything that's not on the agenda offhand? Particular issues? No? All right. Well, I'll just throw out one thing. For those who were brave enough to come out on, what was it, Saturday night for the event at Paisanos for the 250th anniversary, our celebration event of the Valentine's Music Bingo. We had a full crowd, had close to 50 people there, and people hung out and managed to have a good time. And so it was great to have such support in spite of the snow that was coming in that night. And as the people left, we had a little dusting, to say at the least, more than a dusting on the cars by 7 o'clock. But everybody had a good time. So thanks everybody for coming out and all the contributions that people made for that. And that's the beginning of some more events coming up. There's a book club event at the library on Thursday, I believe it is. And then on Saturday, as far as I know, the Cub Scouts are still planning to do their snowbox derby on Church Hill. So that hopefully will happen, and when Kate comes a little bit later, we'll pin down a time for her on that, because she's one of the ones running on that. And then after that, our bigger events are going to be in March. So there'll be a couple of events in March. As mentioned before, the Southampton Town Trivia Night at the Country Club on March 21st, and then on March 29th, the Pancake Breakfast at the Congregational Church. So those are big things coming up in March. So thanks everybody for chiming in. Every time I turn around, I seem to get a new idea from somebody who, we've had this loose group of about 20 people that have been meeting every couple of weeks, but yet there's always a new idea that comes in. So that's perfect. It's the kind of very evolving committee, I guess I would say. So it's great. Okay, well, we have on the docket tonight actually the public hearing, continuation of the poll hearing for Eversource. It is 6:06. So could I have a motion to open the hearing, please?
Move to open the hearing.
Second. All right. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All right. So with that, and just keep in mind, this is our only microphone here, so you guys have got to speak up a bit. We have, in the meantime, received a communication from Eversource, and basically this was a couple of days ago, saying that at this time Eversource no longer wishes to pursue the grant of location request / poll petition for the new line install on Manhan Road in Southampton. Please withdraw our petition application effective immediately. So with that, there is no business for us to conclude. I don't know if that means that they're going to go back to the drawing board and come back with a new idea. But at the present time, we need to just basically close this hearing and let whatever new things happen in the future. So I'll take a motion to close.
The board take no action and close the public hearing.
Okay, all right. Any comments, questions? No? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all right. So
do we know if there have been productive conversations outside of this narrow request?
No, I've contacted the representative multiple times and tried to schedule a meeting with the neighborhood. I've been met with resistance, so.
Yeah.
Right.
By
4 or 5 different ideas.
By the Eversource.
Yeah. So there's been no meeting that's been able to happen. At one point, I know our highway super was working with a regional manager or somebody from Eversource at one point in time. I think they had made some initial progress there, but nothing more has come of that. So at this point in time, it's off the table, and if there's a new plan, I guess we will hear about it when it happens, okay? All right, so with that, we just closed the hearing, am I correct? Yes. Thank you very much. Okay, Scott, just a town administrator report?
Just a couple quick updates. The green community grants have been completed, and I'm going to be seeking reimbursement this week. There's a few things I have to get together. The big announcement is Zero College Highway, the public workshop, is February 27th, 6 o'clock at Norris. Please tell everyone. Hampshire Regional preliminary budget was presented last week, and you'll see it tonight as well. The treasurer and I met with Bartholomew last week as well to review our investments, and I forwarded the materials to the select board. We also had our DOT pre-25% Greenway design mark last week with Ty and Bond, Mass DOT, and about 40 or 50 other stakeholders. Some things came out of it, but I'll update on another time. And then Eversource obviously asked to rescind their application for Manhattan Road. So.
Okay. Any questions of Scott?
You can keep up with the planning on the town website under events. Somebody can be more specific.
Okay. Select board reports. Dan, got anything?
Yeah, the one thing to mention is the Housing Authority met since the last time we spoke. And the most important thing that came out of the Housing Authority meeting was a member of the community volunteered to join the Housing Trust, which we've been really working really hard to get someone to join. That person happens to be here tonight, Stephen Johnson. So that moves on to the select board as we know the need to form that. Well, the committee's formed, but somehow get him onto it.
Yeah, we need to figure that out because we've got a 5-person trust that needs to be enabled and put together. We've had a couple of people that are interested that have been interviewed. There's a third person that I haven't been able to catch up with. And then there is a member from select board as one of the 5 members.
Oh, okay.
So we got to figure out if this is one of the 5 or if it's the select board delegate. So that we'd have to work that out.
So that was the big news for Housing Authority. The other thing was talked about a couple other properties in town, and really we're kind of debating as a Housing Authority, like how many active projects can we really handle at once? That's the question. You know, we have the 2 properties on the College Highway area. We'll probably end up deciding that's enough for us to handle at one time, than adding another project and trying to do that at the same time. But we'll see what we decide. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. Anything from Concom?
I don't think, was that the last, between the side?
I don't know, not sure.
I can't remember.
They'll have a meeting coming up in the beginning of March, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Stephen.
Nothing.
Okay. Cindy.
Hello. Well, first of all, the Open Space Committee had to cancel their meeting last week because of a lack of a quorum, because of sloppy weather. The Board of Health met on the 10th of February, and a lot of attention is being paid to the multiple properties that are being looked at for various reasons, because of safety issues, because of issues regarding that the Board of Health is reasonably involved in, et cetera, septic issues, et cetera. So it's quite a list. I counted 8 that night that we either got little or great updates on. Also, the Board of Health is, in my opinion, working very hard to look at the whole budget issues, and we'll be hearing from them in a future budget meeting. They also, the Public Health Excellence Shared Services Grant has come before them, and they the chair strongly urges that we complete it to the extent possible. Some of the questions there is no answer for, other than we don't know or we're not involved, et cetera, but it's recommended that it be completed as best as possible in order to give the state the understanding of what the status of the Southampton Board of Health is at this time. There are gaps, clearly, and this will help, and that's not due until April or May. Let's see here, what else? I guess that's it from the Board of Health. The Board of Assessors met today. It was a regular meeting. We are making, in my opinion, great strides in terms of the various responsibilities of the Board of Health, looking at exemptions and looking at abatements, et cetera, like that, but also looking at process, ways to improve things, and discussion on various ways that we could improve on the capturing of new growth and other things. An idea came up today that's so brand new that I'm not able to report on. I need to do some research first, but I really like the idea that came out of how to be a little more efficient and effective in that whole board. It's a very extremely important board, as we know, to capture the growth that we need to and to tax appropriately everybody in town.
Okay, good.
That's it.
That's it. All right, very good. Okay, on my end, not a whole lot in terms of the grant committee movement at the moment. There's a couple of things coming open. I sat in on a webinar today for the MVP grant, the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant. With a lot of the examples that they've shown from various other towns, there's big projects that many towns get involved in that are nothing on Southampton's radar that I can tell that would equate with some of those. These are like $500,000 projects in Northampton and part of the eastern part of the state and so forth. And nothing jumped to my mind yet. Anyway, I'm going to go back and look at the priority grid list that was in our MVP plan, which coincides with our hazard mitigation plan. We had talked about putting in for some a feasibility study for a heating and cooling center in town, and that is as far as we've gotten. We never got feedback from them when we put in our expression of interest, but I asked today and they said it doesn't matter if you didn't get any feedback, you're still eligible to apply anyway. So we'll have to look at that again and see if there's something that makes some sense, but I'll forward around some of the other ideas of what's been done in other communities, and we're not thinking in the same league, I think, in terms of some of the issues and problems that other communities have, and a lot of it's related to flooding for many of them, and some issues that just aren't necessarily applicable to Southampton that other communities have been, just gotten involved in. So that's probably the main one coming up. The expression of interest for the One Stop will be coming up fairly soon, and I think that's about it right now for urgent grants. Even though we put in the Mass Trails ones and then the FEMA ones for the Assistance to Firefighters grants, who knows, with everything going on, whether there's any grant money out there, quite honestly. I think it's a big question mark this year in terms of what's possible, especially from the federal level. The only other thing happening this week is the bylaws committee review committee's meeting on Thursday to look at a couple of amendments that hopefully we can just tweak a little bit and get them onto the special town meeting warrant. But yeah, Stephen, yeah.
No, I will take it later.
Okay. Okay, so that's kind of it for that. Let's go on to new business. So first up, I think we have the water department overtime policy. So I see Brett, wanna come on up to the table here and have a seat. Podium. Somewhere, yeah. Yeah. So, Brett Simmons, our water superintendent. Go for it. Tell us what you're doing.
Looking to get the second of the overtime policies approved. We had one approved, and it barely snuck by the PPB board. They wanted clarification on we didn't have the words in there that were personal, sick, and holiday time were considered hours worked. So this is a new policy that was signed on January 14th by the water commissioners to add those words.
Okay, would you, for the listening public, would you just read the overtime policy?
The non-salary Southampton Water Department employee is required to work on a Saturday or Sunday. That employee shall be compensated for a minimum of 4 hours at a rate of 1.5 times the regular base hourly rate for hours worked in excess of 40 hours per week. The new language here is vacation, holiday, personal, and sick time shall be counted as time worked for the purposes of computing overtime.
Okay. So even though just for our purposes, even though the water commissioners have signed off on this, there still has to come before the select board. So do I understand that PQB is in favor of this and has passed it to us? Is that what's happened? at this point?
The policy was initially voted on in the PPP, and I don't recall the date, a month or so ago. I was supposed to follow up with John Lumbra, and I believe we were supposed to get some clarification on it, but it passed the PPP board for the initial
Mhm.
overtime policy on November 20, was signed on the 26th. I don't recall the date, I'm sorry.
Okay, so you're looking for our approval of the same thing that the Water Commissioners has put their name to, right?
Correct.
All right, questions? I have a few.
Well, is this consistent with other town policies in terms of computing overtime? That the added wording, vacation, holiday, personal sick time would count towards the purpose of computing overtime? You know the answer to that?
I'm not attempting to compare us with the DPW, but this is consistent with their language.
Okay, so if somebody's on vacation, approved vacation for a week, but then they come back from vacation and they need to be called into work, and it exceeds the number of hours because they had a vacation week, then that meant that they would be eligible for the overtime compensation. That's the understanding.
Correct, because we're adding the words
Yeah.
vacation, holiday, personal, and sick time.
Okay,
And might I also add that this is not only compared to the DPW, this is also very competitive to other water departments in the area, which we are actively competing
I know.
to keep
Always
people
said that.
employed. That isn't my water department woes educational tour that I was been on. That is not going away anytime soon.
So just a question, I'd just like clarity in terms of what you mean by required to work. Because I think other departments, if somebody, like Highway Department, for example, if they're called in because there's a snow emergency and they have to work on Saturday, that's a separate thing. So what does required to work mean for the Water Department?
Required to
That's
work
in your first
was-
sentence there somewhere? So what is it,
We
is
have to-
there,
Well, we have to do the weekend well checks. We have to be in that building 365 days a year. So somebody has to cover it.
so it's not necessarily an emergency?
No, but it is outside the normal working hours of Monday through Friday.
Why couldn't it be done during the week?
It has to be physically, someone, a human being has to go into water department, a licensed individual from the water department has to go to that property, the well, the treatment plant, 365 days a week, out of the year. There can't be, there's no maintenance work that has to be done, that we have to go in there, but we have to write in our DEP chemical ads, we have to look at the pumps, check the flow rate, everything, and make sure we're having no issues in there.
So they actually
And
have to
that
go
is-
in both Saturday and Sunday?
Every day.
Every 365 days a year, someone from the Southampton Water Department has to visit that property and spend at least a minimum of 1 hour in that building. And that was part of our sanitary survey. Well, and it was written in the sanitary survey from 2020 that I supplied in my educational tour back a couple months ago for September. But that is a requirement from the DEP that we have to go to that building and we record our data, we do our ad sheets, we take our flows from the previous day. If timing falls into it, we end up adding, mixing chemicals, anything that
And
needs to
that's
be
it.
done.
What's bothering me a little bit is there's no minimum in here. I mean, if I went in and it took me 15 minutes to do it, do I still get 4 hours of pay?
Well, it's required that we have to spend 1 hour in there.
It doesn't say that though. That's why I'm asking for that
Right.
clarity, because that doesn't give me that clue about what that means, required to work. I mean, if this is the reason why somebody has to work on a Saturday or Sunday, then I think we should say it's required specifically to go and monitor whatever has to happen at the well. Because this is, you could drive a truck through this.
That's the only reason somebody's getting out of bed on Saturday morning for the water department or Sunday morning.
But I
is to
think
go
if you
down there.
want something solid in policy, it ought to be more specifically said that, so that everybody's clear and there's nobody's gonna have a misinterpretation of what that means. That, somebody's gotta go in there to read gauges, monitor whatever, file a report, whatever all that entails in that hour. And that, there's at least That's assumed to be at least an hour's worth of work from what you're saying?
That's minimum required is 1
Okay.
hour's worth of work.
Okay.
1 hour in the building.
Yeah, okay.
I do want to just point out that this would actually apply to their administrative assistant as well, who works 40 hours Monday through Friday for the town. So if that employee worked an hour on Saturday or Sunday, she would then be eligible for this.
The way it's written now, it's anybody.
Mhm.
Yeah.
At my discretion, I mean, they're not gonna have her
Yeah.
administrative assistant come in on Saturday to,
Yeah. But I think all we're saying, I think, Brett, is just to have it laid out clearly in black and white, so there's no misinterpretation of what it can be.
20 different ways to skin a cat, and everybody actually, this is the reason why we're here this another time, is because every time we hit one of these boards, somebody has a very specific,
Well,
something they want me to add to it.
Yeah. Well,
I'd be willing to absolutely have everybody tell me how they want it written, so that we can end
Yes.
this,
Well, I
or
think-
move forward.
Is the concern about required to work and recognizing that there may be a state regulation, there may be an emergency where you lose pressure.
if there's an emergency, I understand that. I mean, I think that happens with other departments, like the highway department, for
So-
example. The way this is written right now is pretty wide open, is the way I see it.
I agree, and I'm trying to key in on how to fix it.
Mhm.
Can
And I
I,
think required work is needing some further definition.
can I ask something different, Brett?
Yeah.
Is there every single weekend somebody going to get overtime? Or are there some people whose work schedules are such that part of their 40-hour work week will happen on a Saturday or Sunday, and thus this will not be an overtime compensation for those? Is this like emergency kind of thing? So-and-so's on vacation, they generally work Saturday or Sunday, therefore somebody else is going to have to add to their 40 hours and cover that person for a Saturday, Sunday. Is that the
So
circumstance?
historically, Monday through Friday, like
Yeah.
any other town job here,
Right.
Yeah,
is Monday through Friday.
correct.
At current staffing levels, there is no ability to shift somebody's regular Monday through Friday job through a Wednesday through Saturday job. At current,
You've got, what, 2 people?
that's it.
And you need a third, right?
We need a third.
Mhm.
And I guess while we're at it, I have, I want to add that I have 26 applications
Good.
from November 22nd of 2024.
Mhm.
And of those 26, not one single person that has submitted their application here has a distribution or treatment license. So ultimately, that would make them
Mhm.
unable to do this job,
Mhm.
at least
But to
until
go
after
along
they
with-
pass the license, get licensed through the State Drinking Water Board. and
To go along with my questioning, though, if the regular work of someone is 40 hours and they have the proper certification and licensing, et cetera, and can they shift their work and work that week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so there's 40 hours, and therefore be getting the regular rate, not the 1.5 times rate? Is that something you can do, or is that not possible?
If we find the right candidate that is willing to call their Saturdays and Sundays a regular shift, I would imagine
Oh,
that
it's
we
a
could.
choice thing, right?
So how do you figure out who comes in on Saturday? So it's both Saturday and Sunday, it's not Saturday or, right? For what you're
Right,
saying?
yeah, 365 days.
So, so that's,
Christmas,
first of all, so it should be
Thanksgiving.
Saturday and Sunday, not Saturday or Sunday, right? It's both. But is it, how do you schedule it now? I mean, you take turns
Right-
between the two?
Right now, Andrew's been doing it.
Uh-huh. Okay. I mean, I don't know.
For
I
both
just feels
Saturday
like
and
we need to
Sunday?
get more clarity here in terms of, and I think we need to put in that, assuming that a minimum of 1 hour is required or something, and what the duties are specifically. It's not the normal regular duties during the week that somebody would do. It's because they have to come in and do this particular state-regulated task and reporting on that weekend, right?
The state regular task
Yeah.
every single 365.
So I think we need
days.
to specify that in there. That's all I'm suggesting, is that we add that more clarity.
I don't know
Yeah,
if we
Dan?
want to restrict the water supervisor that much, because he may need people to come in on Saturday or Sunday for other purposes. So it may not specifically be that. I think really is it's around the required to work part. I think if we just change it to say, if they're required to work by the water supervisor, if he approves it, then they can work those hours on Saturday or Sunday, as approved by him. Maybe that's the one part that's missing, so people, anybody can just work Saturday or Sunday without permission.
Well, there's only 3 people involved. You've got yourself, your assistant, and you've got the admin assistant. So I think we definitely have to make it clear that it's not the admin assistant, for example. I mean, you're coming in because you've got this task to do, or it's an emergency. It's not because you didn't finish your work on Thursday night, right? That's my assumption.
And
So-
and nobody
So
will
I
be
don't
showing
wanna
up
be
unless I approved them to work on a Saturday or
Yeah,
Sunday for
so-
whatever reason.
Okay, go ahead. I mean, it seems like, but you're approving Andrew basically every weekend to come in both days to do that, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So.
The other question I had on it is, do you also want the ability to authorize overtime for people say an emergency happens outside of normal business hours, such that their hours go beyond 40 hours a week? Maybe you would like some type of, the overtime policy to allow you the flexibility to have people work more hours that week that would kind of have. So, suggestion. Your choice. Yes.
Is it not currently the policy that 35 plus or 40 plus is compensated as overtime?
Well, over 40 is definitely compensated as overtime. What the issue is, if you work 1 hour or 15 minutes, then you get compensated for a minimum of, which is the real issue. And usually those things are reserved in collective bargaining agreements, so that if you have a worker that gets called in for an emergency at night or on a weekend, they have to upend everything, and so they're guaranteed a certain amount of pay. At least that's like half of a day pay. It's usually not for scheduled work or things that are ongoing. It's usually something for an emergency or something out of the ordinary.
Right.
I've worked with other wastewater treatments and water departments, and usually they might do, someone work Sunday through Thursday, and then another person would work, Tuesday through Saturday, something like that. So there's ways that you can offset it.
We don't have enough people.
If you had a
So
third
two
person, that
things.
might be possible.
Non-salaried, if we swapped out state licensed or whatever it is that distinguishes the person who can go down for an hour and qualify. So state licensed employee is required to work on an emergency basis rather than a scheduled basis. I think that's what we're talking about.
But this doesn't sound like it's an emergency on Saturday and Sunday.
We're giving some feedback. Saturday and Sunday, 365-day coverage
Right.
is a scheduling challenge,
Right.
not an emergency.
In my mind. I would-
Right. So if we want to make sure that, there's some recognition that this is an imposition, recognizing an emergency condition where you need a licensed person, some special consideration may be due there, minimum hours. But I agree, this is too fuzzy.
I think one of the issues also is just comparing it to other positions. So we have like an administrative assistant in our public safety that works 40 hours. If the police chief called this person up on a Saturday or Sunday to work 2 hours, they would only get paid overtime for 2 hours. They wouldn't get the minimum.
Agreed.
Same thing with like the assistant treasurer, who's 35 hours. If there was a billing issue and they had to come in an emergency, payroll issue, which unfortunately does happen, and they had to work additional hours past 40 hours, they would work the actual hours and get paid overtime. They wouldn't get a minimum of. So if it only took 1 hour, they would get paid for that 1 hour.
We're also trying to find somebody who's willing to get out of bed on Saturday and Sunday. So now you're assuming I find that right candidate. You want to pay them for 1 hour. You're assuming that this day and age, you're going to find the candidate that wants to get out of bed on Saturday morning for $30 an hour for 1 hour, then Sunday.
I'm going to go back to my professional career, which was nursing, and we had to cover 24/7. And I have to say, we knew that we were gonna have to, it's not about getting out of bed. I mean, if you know that every Saturday and every Sunday, somebody has to go in and it's so-and-so who's gonna do it, does it have to happen at a very early hour of the morning?
It
It
has
has to happen like at 5 a.m. or something, or 4 a.m.?
typically at 6:30 in the morning.
6:30,
That's when
and-
our computers dump the numbers from yesterday's into.
And so it
today's
can't
data.
happen at 9 a.m., it has to happen at 6 a.m.?
There's occasions where it does happen, but
Yeah,
consistent with our data, and if the system's running at 6:30 in the morning, we're taking levels of a tank
yeah.
that's still running. So if we get there at 9:30 versus 6:30, our numbers aren't consistent with a 24-hour. We're
Yeah.
taking
I also
levels
think-
and tanks, we're taking dose per day, per doses of what's in the
Sure,
drinking water,
sure.
which going into our
Well, it's
residents'
all very
drinking water.
important, honestly, I get that. Yeah.
I think that if you're gonna be every week guaranteeing a minimum of 4 hours, so it's not really an emergency, but they should have to work the 4 hours, and there's other stuff that they could do.
Well, that's kind of what I was asking, if there was a way to, say, go home at noon on Wednesday in order to cover the 4 hours on Saturday and work the 4 hours, especially, well, any, for, you know, if it's a non-exempt individual, that's, has that been thought about, or you're worried the person will quit because you're gonna say, that's amazing.
I'm trying to be competitive with
Yeah.
other water departments,
Yeah.
and this is what other departments,
Mhm.
other water departments in other towns are. This is their standard operating procedure. There is not one
Yeah.
person in any water department in Massachusetts that you will find that doesn't get paid overtime for minimum pay with overtime
4
on a
hours.
Saturday.
But
Or
could,
4
could,
hours
could we
for-
consider 2 hours instead of 4 hours,
That's
for
right.
example? I mean, what's?
And then that person's gonna go consider putting his application in another place. Because we're being competitive, because I said it during our meeting,
Yeah.
during the select board meeting. We're competing against other water departments. People are not coming to Southampton because they like spelling Southampton on our paychecks, or the color that our paychecks are written on. They're coming here for compensation and compensation only. And there is a shortage of licensed people in Massachusetts with drinking water, distribution, and treatment licenses.
Yeah.
And we are stealing them from other towns. I have Hoyok's right here. Granted, they're union, but they're giving $1,000, $2,000 stipends per year. They're giving longevity pay. They're giving $1 to $2 an hour on top of your listed pay rates per grade of license. So you could be getting $1 to $2 an hour on top of your listed pay rate, plus an additional $3,000 if you have a Distribution 3 license. Plus, if you stay there, then now you're getting longevity pay. So, again, people aren't coming here because they like the town hall or they like the water department. They're coming here for the pay, and this is what we're trying to be competitive with. And so, if I can't be competitive, including on weekends, there's been some off-the-table discussions on where we're gonna end up trying to get water from, whether it be Hoyoke or Easthampton, when we're unable to staff this department, because we cannot be competitive.
Well, how can we rework this so that it's a little bit tighter, just in terms of what we're talking about? Anybody have any
I got a
suggestions?
pen, I'll write it down, this way we can,
I just thought the part about the required, there was a little bit of uncertainty around it just saying required. And my suggestion was required by the water superintendent. Would be a way to ensure that no one is taking advantage of this.
yeah. The timesheets are signed by me,
Yeah.
reviewed by me, signed by me.
Yeah.
They're also reviewed by Joe Slattery, the water commissioner, one of the
Yeah,
water commissioners. I mean, there's nothing's gonna get through town hall here just because someone's sneaking in on Saturdays and sneaking in a fake time card.
So is
So that's-
is the non-salaried part the correct part? Does that take care of yourself and the other employee? Or does that include your administrative
I'm-
assistant?
Either kind.
I'm exempt, right, but
The two other ones are non-salaried,
Yeah.
so it would apply to both.
This
So
would
it-
only apply, I'm sorry.
So we have to make that more specific. It should not include your administrative assistant, I don't believe. So I
How
think
would you
it
like
needs to
that
be
worded?
your whatever, your licensed water technicians. If a licensed water technician, if you want to put in whatever license they require, is required to work on Saturday and Sunday by the looks here.
Or, because I could come in outside of my regular 40
Okay,
hours.
okay,
So that's
okay.
why it's the or.
Okay.
It's gonna
On
give
s-
me,
all
they're
right.
not gonna.
So on
they're not
Saturday or
specific.
Sunday, to complete whatever the DEP report, whatever it is. Let's be specific about the task that,
Why
That
would
person
that,
would do.
I mean, it could be a water emergency.
There could-
Right,
I'm getting there.
now we're pigeonholing this
There
down
could
to
be.
a very specific.
Okay.
I'm getting it. The water emergency could happen too, but the reason you want this is because you've got to do this report every day,
Mhm.
right? So whatever the name of that report is, what is it called? Got a number or a name or something, DEP, whatever, water quality control
Treatment plan,
report or
check.
something, whatever it's called. So let's present, whatever the name of the report is,
So
okay?
now this policy is only gonna be specific to this. What if I have an emergency and the guy?
Well, we can add that language, that's where we're going. So this is just taking what you've got right here. So, because right now, you can throw in the emergency first part if you wanted to, I suppose. So if a licensed technician is required to work because of an emergency determined by the water superintendent, I don't know.
I think just pointing out a couple other things is with counting the vacation, holiday, personal sick time towards hours worked is something that the town normally doesn't do. So if you have someone, not saying this would happen, but in other instances where I've worked, someone would be sick Monday through Friday and miraculously they get well Saturday to get the 4 hours minimum for an hour work, and then Sunday they're better, and then Monday they're back to sick. So it
This
kind of,
language is specifically copied directly, not trying to compare myself with DPW or the water department, but this is copied directly from the DPW, the highway guys.
I can hear you though on that one.
Well, I mean, I look from a perspective of the town has a need, right, for weekend coverage. And whether the person was on holiday, sick, or whatever, they worked the week, I don't really care. It's the coverage on the weekend that we need.
So it's-
Abuse of someone.
I have to answer to the budget every year. I'm avoiding abuse. That's why I'm hired, to trust my judgment.
Yeah.
I'm telling you my judgment is sound.
I think you avoid abuse by having the water superintendent being the one who determines who's going to be covering that work.
Go ahead and say it again.
Oh.
Didn't hear what you.
No,
You avoid the abuse because you have the water superintendent making the decision as to who is going to be covering that shift over the weekend. So it may be the event that someone is on holiday during the work week, and he has no other choice but to have them come in for that weekend. I would like to have him have that ability and not be like, well, because that person worked or was on vacation, holiday, whatever, on Monday through Friday, that he can't use that resource on the weekend to cover that with such a small staff.
Yeah, and I gather, Scott, what you're looking at, because we have, with the highway department, they're on a union, right? So the director's not, but obviously the employees are, so whatever the clause in the union is about being called into work, I don't know. But we can double check that. But I think the idea is, then, I'll try to repeat what I started to say and see if we can agree to it or not. So, if a licensed water technician is required to work because of a town emergency declared by the water superintendent, hang on, got to fit in Saturday and Sunday in there somewhere, on Saturday or Sunday, and need to somehow fit it in that with the filling in the
And/or
report of the
well check.
DEP report, right?
DEP required
Yeah,
Saturday, Sunday
so-
well coverage.
To do the well coverage report or something like that. That would be a little bit better. I think we need to say that employee needs to work a minimum of 1 hour. That's what you said it takes at least to do that report.
That's what the DEP requires a human being, a licensed human being, to be in that building, 1 hour per
So
day.
let's just put that down and make that clear. Then it's clear, so nobody can question it. Nobody can come back and say, well, gee, they were only there for 15 minutes, so how come they got paid? You're saying that they have to be there at least an hour. So that would be my recommendation, that we have you just rewrite that, and we'll pick it up at the next meeting. And
I have to raise the question, however, that just let's assume it's a weekend that you intend to cover. And then there's an emergency that occurs and the other employee who is non-exempt, the water emergency occurs on a Thursday night, and it requires, and I've witnessed this in my own neighborhood, that somebody come out and dig, a hole and fix the water line and do a whole bunch of stuff that happens. It's an emergency. And it exceeds the 40 hours. They also will get time and a half for something over 40 hours, but it isn't going to be a 4-hour minimum. Do you see what I'm saying? If it's 2
Right,
hours that they have
Monday.
to work. So this only applies to the Saturday and Sunday, and it only applies to the language that Chris just said. So somebody that works a regular 40-hour work week, is that what it is, a 40-hour work week or a 35-hour?
40.
40. So, but they have to work additional because of a water emergency outside of a Saturday or Sunday.
Right.
Do they only get the number of hours additional that they work?
So it depends on whether or not they have checked out. This current employee, that's the only other employee there, so the regular schedule is 8 AM to 4 PM.
Okay,
So the second he goes home,
yeah.
second he turns around,
And he has to
works.
come back, but it isn't a
Yeah.
4-hour minimum at that
It is,
time.
yeah, for nights and weekends.
It's a 4-hour minimum
Mhm.
even for that
Yeah.
circumstance.
Most of our emergencies, when it gets to that point,
Yeah.
we're not nitpicking over 4 hours because it takes 2 hours to call an emergency, it takes, say,
So
we're
there's
not
no such
starting
thing as a
breaking ground.
2-hour emergency, basically, you're saying?
Not unless it's something internal in the house, but
That's
for the
what I'm
most
saying.
part,
Okay.
but
something else.
when it comes to
Yeah.
digging in the street, usually we're there for at minimum,
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm generalizing today, but we were on 16 hours over there on Route 10 on December 3rd.
Okay, well, that would be my suggestion, is that we have you rework this language a little bit. You can tidy it up a little bit, talk to Scott about a final version of it if you want to before then, but we'll pick it back up at the next meeting.
It's very
Stephen,
frustrating.
because we've got a long agenda to go here.
Unbelievably frustrating.
Yeah.
Believe me, I know. We just heard about nights and weekends triggering overtime automatically. Whatever that language is, needs to be either adjacent or integrated into this benefit. If there's another policy that automatically triggers overtime at less than 40 hours, we'd like to understand that.
Okay. Okay.
Typically, he's at work, I have a signed acceptance letter from when the water technician here is. And his normal work week will be 40 hours per week with expected hours at 8 to 4 PM.
Sure. Yeah, that doesn't really address what.
So somewhere else, do you have it written down that they get the overtime? Is it in another policy somewhere?
Well, and I can continue to read it if you.
No, that's fine. Whatever we are writing down, if we have to expand this to include whatever you're talking about
Yes.
now for overtime.
40
Just-
per week, not 8 per day.
Right.
In the event, I'll continue, I'll finish the paragraph in his acceptance letter. Normal work week will be 40 hours per week with expected hours at 8 AM to 4 PM. In the event of an emergency, you will be expected to work at a rate of time and a half with a 4-hour minimum for weekends and call-outs.
Okay, but if that's true, that should be part of the overtime policy.
With letters of offer or acceptance, it's not binding, because everything still has to go by what the town policies are, or else we would have different things for different people if that was the case. So, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to codify this into an actual policy.
Yeah. So that's what we offer the guy, otherwise we're.
It says expected.
Yeah, okay. So let's work at reworking
Just so
the
that
language.
this gets finished next time, what would you like that to clarify the next, I'll add
Well,
it
you
verbatim.
just, in the last few minutes, introduced another overtime
I raised
provision.
it, yeah.
And I just think it needs to be adjacent to this so that we can see it as a whole. And, you know, it's reserving judgment whether this is the ideal overtime policy for emergency workers. But we need to see the whole picture.
I think it's gonna be comparable to what the DPW has in their language.
Well, that'll give us a
And
chance to
that's
take a
the-
look at that.
That's the way it's been there since, for 6 years in the water department. So
Okay.
it's not a new issue.
Probably not,
Never been an
but I
issue
think we
before.
can put it down on paper in black and white so it's clear, so we don't have to keep debating it over
Well,
time.
and the challenges of running a 2 or 3 person
Yeah.
department are profound.
Yeah.
You recognize
I
that.
think we should recognize that. It sounds like he's having a heck of a time getting it.
And just so you know, I have been covering, since the day I started, I've covered every single holiday down there, give the kid a break. So I'm talking every holiday.
Yeah, maybe you want to talk about holidays in here too, such that you're not doing every single one. You know?
So,
Okay. Thanks, Brett, appreciate it.
all right, thank you.
We will pick it back up. Right.
Well, one other thing, then, in our meeting minute notes, once this is clarified, we have that, the water commissioners voted that this should be retroactive to when he started. I'm not sure if that was brought up, but it's in the meeting minute note. It wasn't written in this policy because we're not.
We'd
We're
have,
not-
we'd have a PCF coming in for that, most likely, to act on the PCF.
Right, and so that, yeah, it's not saying retroactive in there because it's not.
Right.
It's gonna be,
No, it wouldn't in the
No,
policy,
yeah,
yeah.
right,
No,
so I
it
just
would-
wanna bring
That would
that
be
up,
on the
make sure
personnel
that you
form,
understand.
yeah.
Yeah.
That would be on the personnel form, not on the policy. Okay, thanks. All right.
thank you all.
Thank you. Next up, Hampshire Regional Budget Review, overview rather. So we got Margaret and Dawn, maybe?
Yeah.
Or who's gonna, or both of you? Or one of you, or both of you?
Is this part of the budget hearing?
No,
Or
this is just, I know. This is the overview of school budget that they went through last week.
Okay.
That is not the budget hearing, this is the trust for what happened at Hampshire Regional because only Scott was left. Okay, so we have Margaret Lawson and Kim, I forgot your last name. Dawn.
Dawn is our new business
Yes,
administrator.
thank you, perfect.
And I sit on the Norris School Committee, but I'm the rep from Norris to the high school.
Mhm.
So this is
Okay.
why I'm here.
Okay, can we give you 15 minutes?
Well, let's see, no. But I do have a question. I understand, I'm a little confused because every town is a little different, and there's, the finance committee in some towns is involved.
They will be here, they're
And-
sitting in their seats, they're coming at 7:30 for budget hearings. This is not a hearing, this is just to give,
Just information, but they don't need this information.
well, they'll get the packet, part of it. They won't, yeah.
Okay.
They weren't planning on being here before the budget
also
hearings,
sit on
which are,
finance.
but Doug is one of those persons.
My name's Doug Howard.
So Doug is one. But we've got the regular budget hearings that are scheduled for tonight.
Oh, that's at 7:30 event?
Yes.
Okay,
So that's
what I was
what's happening.
confused about. Oh, yeah,
So,
all right.
Yeah, so this is, Margaret came in last week and said, can we come in and give an overview of what happened at the meeting? Because Scott was there, but we were not there.
Right.
So that's why this is happening. So
Okay.
whatever you can do in the most efficient way possible would be helpful, but that's okay. Here we are.
All right, shall we, let's go through this. This packet right here that has this on it. I'm going to skip certain slides. The superintendent talked about the strategic plan, and basically, these are 4 elements of the strategic plan in year 1, and the one that's being focused on here is the intra-district partnerships and regional efficiency, where we're developing a budget, blah, blah, blah. You can read that. And then the goals for immediate action is to, this was for the superintendent. He was to build a central office team and create a culture of support, build an efficient and effective fiscal system. And so the rest of this document is really focused on the budget. Now, the preliminary budget is what is contained in here, and it reflects feedback from the All Districts Committee that we received, and you have, I think John Lumber was on that committee, and who else is on that, Margaret? And Kim from Southampton. Yeah, so there are representatives from each town, and there was a level funded budget, a level service, and then a level service plus. And the level service plus basically discussed a different way of doing the information technology. So bringing it from an external service to an in-house service. And the price tag for that was deemed to be too high, number one, and also the question was, is this the year to go full bore? When there's focus on forensic work, so to speak, and digging out of the problems that we've had and that exist and still exist within the central office, which we are trying to address. So that came out. And then anything subsequent to those meetings, which were December 16th and January 16th, there are new contracts, new information, that was factored into this budget as well. I think there's some, we also meet with the Finance Subcommittee of the Hampshire Regional School Committee, which Margaret sits on, and Tom, and
Our chair, and then a member from Chesterfield.
yeah, Trish Colston Montgomery. And so at that point, we didn't have a lot of revenue numbers. We're starting to get some revenue numbers, so the initial revenue numbers are in here. They are not final. We do not have balances carried over from previous years. We're still working on that. And it captures items that were not reflected in the 25 budget. So when you look at the growth from 25 to 26, sometimes it looks like it's going up higher than it is because somebody forgot to budget in 25 for those positions that have existed for a long time. So let's see. I'm going to leave you with some details. I'm not going to go over it right now, but I'll be glad to address any questions regarding the central office budget, because the central office budget is one component of the whole Hampshire regional budget, and that was reviewed at length at those ABC meetings. But this is the data. You don't have that in here. I will pass it out separately, but it goes down to the gnat's eyeball, really, in terms of these are the various departments. Here's the superintendent, and this is his salary and all the salaries of the people in that department. Then it goes to the finance and HR department. It talks about all the salaries and then any other expenses like these software expenses and things like that. That will be on these two documents.
So that's the backup to the central office?
That's the backup to the central office, exactly. And so that's not what's up there. That's not what's up there either.
Oh.
This is.
It was right there.
Yeah, that's it. And so the ones that are highlighted are the ones that represent the Hampshire regional portion, so that middle section right through there. And then at the very end, it says 1,964,351. That's what the projection is for the 26 budget that is factored in to the whole budget that you're going to be seeing. So this really is just one line code. And I think I heard sound effects over there from Steve, and I understand because in 25, the approved budget was $1,674,000, and it has grown to $1,964,000. As I said, some of it is because it wasn't budgeted originally, and some of it is the increased costs. Some people were hired at a salary larger than what had been budgeted in order to attract those people. It wasn't me, but just to say. And anyway, so this will go into that level of detail. But
So I'll say too that one of the things that I think has been eye-opening for Dawn, because she was with the town of Goshen, is everything that central office does. I think it tends to be a little bit mysterious, all the things that they do for the district, because it's not just the superintendent in the business office, it's also the person who runs all of our curriculum and is trying to coordinate curriculum between all of the elementary schools as they feed into the high school, as well as special ed. And the special ed, that's a lot of work. to do that across the district.
Yeah, I will agree with that. When people would say, well, central office, was this amorphous thing? I didn't know what central office does, but it has, I thought it just did the budget basically. But it's the onboarding, the HR portion, the budgeting portion, as Margaret was saying, in some places it's called the SPED director, but here it's called the pupil services. And in addition to that, curriculum and the superintendent's, activities as well. So,
And then all the forensic work in order to clean up issues from the past. Because we have not been able to file some reports on time because of the forensic work is still ongoing with previous years. And that puts us at risk of having the Department of Revenue and DESI say, no, sorry, we're going to put you on your own budget. We're going to decide what your budget is. And so we have to keep putting money at this problem, and we're hoping it will be resolved by the end of this fiscal year.
End of FY26 fiscal year. And let's see, so I think starting off with the next one, I don't know if you have this one, Scott, this presentation, but it has the summary of the FY26 budget, yes. And so the budget is going up 4.5%. The revenues are about flat from last year, and the assessments are going up 7.35%. And when we get to the assessments, or if you want to turn to the assessments, because that's what everybody's interested in, it's the last page. Here's the assessment to each town. And just to review that, so Southampton is the third one down, but I think the thing that's really important to understand is that the state calculates what the minimum contribution is from each town. And they do that based on the equalized value. It's called the EQV. It's the assessors. You were talking earlier about the critical assessors roles. And one of the things they do is they go by DOR requirements for assessing each property's value. And the Department of Revenue requires valuations to be updated every so often. And this, unfortunately, was one of those every so often. So every town has seen, across the state, has seen their property values go up. And then their tax rates go down, but their tax bills go up because the valuations have gone up. And so what they look at is they say, what is the value of all of the property in this town? And they use that as a measure of your ability to pay for your schools. That's number one. They also go to your IRS filing or your Massachusetts state filing and look at your income. So they look at what is the income of everybody within the town. And then they look at the number of students that you are sending to the school. So it's a mixture of things. And so they say, based on all of these variables, you should be able to pay at least this. And for our whole region, it's $6,172,310. For Southampton, it's $3,407,000. Of course, you have the majority of the students, so that factors in as well. And then they're saying, okay, transportation, you have to pay for transportation as well. So those first two columns add together to come up with your minimum requirement. So for Southampton, it's $3,795,000. And I think one aspect that's important to understand as well is that we have often, in a lot of the school committee meetings that I have gone to, they talk about the 5-year rolling average of students. That 5-year rolling average only applies to the light blue column in the middle. The minimum requirement, they factor in what is your current enrollment. So the 5-year average tends to smooth out the ups and downs, but depending on what the ups and downs are in this first minimum requirement, total minimum requirement column, the one that says $6,864,000, you'll notice the note under there. It uses the current year enrollment. The other one uses the 5-year average. That's important when you do out the math, you'll see that. And then for
it looks like our 5-year average is 336 for Southampton on the previous slide there.
Yes, yes. That's why each slide builds onto the other, but if you have a short amount of time, I wanted to make sure you saw this one. And so you'll see that your assessment is going up 389,000, almost 390,000, which is 6.8%, which would be middle of the road compared to Westhampton, that's going up 1.3%, and Williamsburg and Goshen, who are going up 14 and 12%. So yours is not the highest increase, but certainly it is.
And what is the factor that makes those that high?
Pardon, say that
What
again?
is the driving factor that makes those two that high?
The
Williamsburg.
driving factor is the property values.
Property value.
And also, if we go back, because I do think it's interesting to see, go back to page 10, and you'll see the enrollment. And so your enrollment over a period of time, the town of Southampton has,
No, not page 10. Back, no, it's down the,
it's not on page 10? Yeah, it's on page 10 on this one. On this one here.
okay, just, I think it's down right about there, Scott, right about 19 or?
Oh, you're saying
yeah,
that
there.
page 10 there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can you go back one more? Yeah. So here's the enrollment by town for the current year. And then you'll see the 5-year average, I guess you can't get them both on the screen, but 5 years ago, Southampton had 360 students going to the school, to Hampshire Regional, and then it went to 346, 321, 329, and now you're at 324. So as Southampton moves, so goes the rest of the towns. So even though Williamsburg and Goshen have had a fairly stable student population, they are inheriting the
Scroll down one, Scott.
they're inheriting the percentage that when Southampton goes down, everybody else has to go up. So that's a driver also.
Percentage-wise.
Percentage-wise, yeah. So.
And this number will, it obviously changes, and they're having the biggest kindergarten class they've ever had at Norris. We're expecting that to come in, and then those creates these bubbles, which, go up. I think at the high school, we have the largest 9th grade class we've had in a long time, like 130 students, and that's huge. So we're not accepting choice anymore in the 9th grade, because we just can't.
So then if we can, so that's sort of the end story there, the assessments and the FTEs. But I'd like to point out a couple of things with respect to the budget itself. So if we can go back there, and if we look at this page, Scott, which is page 5.
The budget by category.
Yeah, budget by category.
Right about there.
So here you will see what was approved in '25 and what the preliminary budget says for various categories: staff salaries and benefits, and sped tuition services and transport, regular transportation, buildings and grounds, central office, and administration, state assessments, etc. If you look at it pictorially, you'll see that, what's driving this, 45 plus 16%, so 60, whatever that is, 50, 61% is
Salaries
and benefits.
Yeah.
And so that's really driving it. The next thing that's huge and has gotten big for every single school is the sped tuition services and transport. And then you'll see it goes down to little narrow pieces, and if you go to the next page, we've combined some of those little ones into an other category, so it's not so crowded, but still you see the same picture. So categories that were less than 2%, we just combined into the other. And then the revenue, you'll see, is relatively flat based on what we have at the moment. The state aid has gone up. The tuition agreements, so that would be Worthington comes in and they have in 2026, I believe it's $11,000 per student, which is greater than the $5,000 for school choice, and of course less than what we pay to educate each of the students.
But
in our own
again,
town.
Worthington also pays their own tuition and their own sped costs.
And
So-
transportation.
And transportation,
Yeah.
right, sorry, that's
Yeah.
what I meant to say.
Yeah.
So, for example, if we send a student who needs special education services that cost $100,000, which is not unusual, so if Southampton sends that cost gets covered by all the towns, because they're all paying into Hampshire Regional. If Worthington has a student paying, and they have to pay $100,000, they pay the whole thing. So there has been times, plus transportation,
Yeah.
so there has been times when they have paid much more then our towns are paid for their students because of that situation.
And that was just by agreement, that's when Worthington came into the district?
Yes, and that agreement ends next year, at the end of
Yes,
26.
so they started at 7,500, we've been gradually moving them up, so it's not such a shock for them, but that will be renegotiated.
And are they capped at a certain number of students?
No,
No. If you go to page, no, let's see, we'll stay here, you'll see then what's really going down is the Hampshire Regional School District School Committee pot that
Where
they
are you
have.
now?
So I'm still
Revenue
on revenue by category.
Category.
And so there was the tuition agreements, which was Worthington and then Clark. The Clark School, has, I believe it's 8 students, and they come in at varying amounts. And it's going down next year because I think 3 or 4 people are graduating. So that's why that income is lower.
all right, so under the school committee line, that is money that the school committee can choose to augment revenue because we might have a balance in our school choice fund, or we might have excess and deficiency, which in the town we call free cash. Last year,
Sorry, that orange folder stays, that's part of the finance committee.
Oh, I thought you were the finance. Sorry. Oh, well then. You'll have to put, we're just taxpayers. Okay. Taxpayers, you'll have to bring those back, but that's okay. Okay.
so last year, we discovered that there was a revolving fund that was primarily consisting of transportation, but also some tuition. Like it had just become this bucket. And according to the Commonwealth, we are not allowed to keep money like that, right? And so we were really afraid that we were going to lose that. And so we applied the entire thing to the budget, knowing that that means that this year might be a little bit different. However, we didn't use any E&D last year. We didn't use school choice. We
What's
just
E&D?
Excess and deficiency, which
It's
is
like-
like our free cash in a town.
Okay.
Only regional schools are allowed to have excess and deficiency. So if there are balances in those funds, then that is money that the school committee can apply to the budget in order to lower assessments, would be the goal for doing that. So right now, there's 250,000 from school choice, I believe, that, but this is very preliminary because they're still working on some balances, and so there may be additional revenue coming in.
So Scott, if you go to page 8, so down a few more, yes, so this is what Margaret was talking about. Last year, you'll see that thing called miscellaneous revolving fund balances, and then we don't have any of those this year that we're aware of because we were able to effectively spend that last year. The DESE has, we were in constant communication with them, and they have clarified that there are certain things that must be used up in the current year. Rural aid, for example, transportation has to be used up by the following year. You're not allowed to keep it multiple years, and we did have a pot that had been accumulating. So that's what that 1195 was last year. We don't anticipate that for next year. The 250, it could grow, and I don't think we'll be able to apply any excess and deficiency. Excess and deficiency would be like free cash for municipality if we put some in. It hasn't been certified yet, and I don't expect it to be certified before the final budget presentation, which is in March. The DOR and the DESE has indicated that if it gets certified before the first town meeting, that we could lower assessments by applying that with the vote of the school committees to do so. But we are being conservative and saying that there are no excess and deficiency funds to add to that. Then this next page, Scott, if you want to flip down, goes to various grant offsets. They offset the budget. So there's 240, which is a special ed grant. Medicaid reimbursements come in for students who need special services. And then circuit breaker, that's another one that you can use from one year to the next, but it must be spent by the second year. It's 27 months. Rural aid, etc. So that the revenue would decrease the budget. The assessments. Yeah.
And the federal government has said that they are not, at this point, touching IDEA. That is a federal grant. And they are saying that that is going to remain in place amidst everything else that's going on there.
The one other thing I wanted to point out is back on page 5, where we're talking about the budget. And that is, last year, as you'll remember, was a salary negotiation year for the teachers. And it looks like the salaries only went up 42,000, and that's not the case. If you look at this document right here, it has the detailed narrative that explains, I think that's the one, where is it? Yeah, see, it's on
Yep,
page 3.
page three.
Page 3,
On
yeah.
page 3. So I think this one is an important one for you to see. The staff salaries. The total increase to staff salaries due to the settled contracts was about $360,000. And this particular budget has 2 additional staff people. They are paras. They are required in order to meet the mandates of the special education. So we have, those are each at 30,000, so that's adding another 60,000. And then those increases are offset by 2.5 FTE reductions in staffing that the principal has proposed. And additionally, remember how I said there were some expenses that didn't get budgeted in '25? Here's an example of the opposite. Last year, the principal also reduced 2 FTEs, but it never got removed from the budget. So '25 salaries were artificially higher, and so even though the salaries went up 360,000, it was offset by, it didn't look like it was going up by as much. And the only reason I mention that is because this year it will be going up 42,000, but next year there'll be no offsetting amount. So you can expect it to go up 300,000. I just mentioned that just for full disclosure, because if you really look at it, it seems odd, and I think your finance committee would look at it and say, how in the heck could you go up to only 42,000? But these explanations give you the details of that.
Does that increase, so every year is going up by 300,000? That's why next year we'd see a jump?
No.
It's not quite that, it's not quite that, it just, it depends, let's see, so last year, what was factored into the budget would have been, let's see if you can think of a better way to say it, Margaret, but last year what was in the budget was a lower amount. And so the impact of going up is more profoundly felt. So the next year, it's already up at a certain level, so it won't be as large an increase. It could be somewhere between 250 and 3 for the value of the increased COLA. Yeah. So I just thought that was important to point out. The other thing that is unbelievable, which you probably already know, and Scott probably already knows, is that we all participate in the same Hampshire County health plans, and that for employees who have the HMO, it's going up 18%, and for the employees who have the PPO, it's going up 20%. So that is an enormous increase for the benefit plans. So you can see
Is there like
that.
an aggregate on that? I mean, like, does it go beyond the Hampshire County Health Plan? Is it a larger population, or is it a small, what's the population of people that fall into that?
Into that trust, the Hampshire County Insurance Trust. I don't know the answer to that. I can find that out, but it's most of, like, Easthampton.
Well, the reason
it's
I
most
ask
of the
is,
people
are
around
there
here.
specific individuals that unfortunately have had to utilize more services? that
Well, it's not only
would
more
raise the
services,
percentages?
but it's the drugs. What do you call that? Ozempic. It's a lot of these drugs that are out on the market now that are really, really expensive. And so they're being prescribed more readily, and so the costs for the healthcare that the trust is providing has gone up, so they are increasing the premiums for everyone in order to cover that. So it's not that there's a huge increase in the number of people covered, it's fairly stable. but it's the
Cost
cost
increase,
of,
but because of specific circumstances, not everybody gets it. but-
no, but specific,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
some pharmaceuticals
Yeah,
and
okay.
treatments. And, yeah. And then the other very large increase for this year and for next year, the sped costs. So I think that you'll be able to, go through this and read about all of the increases. And I'm glad to answer any questions now or later. I don't know how much time you have, but this is basically, I went through it very quickly at the Hampshire Regional Meeting. I went through it much more methodically and built it, crescendo to the assessments. But we went right for it that time.
Yeah.
And
So what are your next steps? What happens next? You've got to get to a budget in March, but
yes.
you're
So
working on the revenues, so we don't have the final
next-
revenues, right?
Yeah, the next step, the really big step is the revenues.
And then looking at if the school committee would like to see additional cuts. And what generally happens is that looks like staffing cuts. So there's already 2.5 positions that are either not going to be filled, or we're going to have to let a teacher go.
I was going to ask, are there staff, what was it? Are there staffing situations where you have a position, but you've got a vacancy that you might just not fill in order to?
There may be some retirements, and,
Yes.
there may be some retirements, and they may not be filled. I think if the principal were here, she'd say we're walking into dangerous territory because nobody has been spoken to
Right.
about anything.
Sure.
So, can't get more specific than that, but I think what she is trying to do is to make targeted reductions that will have the least impact on students. And so
It's tricky because we are a magnet for school choice.
Yeah.
We get a lot of school choice people in. And once you start increasing class sizes or reducing programming, then you get not only fewer choice students in, but you get more students likely to go somewhere else. And although we only pay $5,000 per student if they're going to another school, if they're going to a charter school, we pay whatever they ask. And that could be $20,000 a student.
And as Margaret said, the charter, the thing that I'm passing out now is just for you to read at your convenience. And that would be if the principal were here, or if you had been at that presentation, this is the presentation she gave that sort of talks about what underlies these numbers. What are what's the curriculum and the educational aspects of what you're seeing in the financials.
So, I'm sorry, Chris.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say a couple things. Sounds like there was some fudging on the numbers because of, found money and money that was used and should have been more acknowledged, or, people that were hired at greater than, you said, greater than the amount that was actually budgeted for. Secondly, there was this negotiation of the union. Therefore, I'm wondering if you don't fill a position and thus class sizes have to become larger, or something's not offered that was always offered, that's going to become a union issue. Thirdly, school choice is a wonderful thing, and I'm glad that, because I happen to have a person up there, and I'm very happy that it's a quality school. But at the same time, if you don't do what you've always done before, the schools, and the draw changes, that could change the attractiveness of school choice. These are all the factors you're trying to balance out.
Yeah, I'm actually more
And-
concerned about students leaving the
Okay.
district than not attracting as many school choice kids in.
Yeah, so those are the underpinnings, and that's what Lauren has tried to address in some of her.
And what's the, I don't know the answer to this, what's the state picture? I mean, do we see more support? Remember, what's that woman's name who was going to represent small rural communities out here? Yeah, is she on this to get more statement to support any of this?
Well, that's where the rural aid comes in.
Yeah.
So we do get additional aid that places like Easthampton and Northampton do not get.
Yeah.
We're trying to be conservative on what we're expecting in rural aid. The other thing that we're doing much better than I think we've done in the past is seeking all the appropriate reimbursements for special ed costs. So the way you invest in your special education program every year, and then often the reimbursement of that comes in the next year. And so that gets tricky when we have a bunch of expenses in one year. We have several students, maybe their outplacement, a single student can cost $250,000 if it's a residential outplacement. And so, yeah, that look on your face is the way I always feel about this.
It's hard to believe.
But then there's what they call circuit breaker, which is a mechanism for reimbursement, and there's also extraordinary relief. So if you have spent X amount over what you expected, you get extraordinary relief. But again, that's for the previous year, and so the timing is always a little
Trying to
off.
reconcile all that is for sure.
The other thing I wanted to mention before you shut me down, before we have to go on to the next thing, is that I'm sure it's no surprise you've heard that there have been a lot of things that have happened over the last year that haven't gone quite right. And one of the most recent discoveries that we reported to the school committee in the last round, when they met a couple weeks ago, is that if you remember in this presentation over here, there's the line for central office. And in 25, you'll see it was 587,000. That was what was approved. In 24, it was around 500,000, let's say. And what would typically happen for the regional schools, so if you look up here, the amount that you're assessed would include every line code that's on here, including the central office. And so those assessments go out to the towns for the high school. So Southampton, all of the 5 towns have been assessed for the whole budget, and the town appropriated the money for all of this. Now you get to the municipal elementary schools, and it doesn't work in the same way as the regional schools. So there's not an assessment, but there is an allocation that is made for the work that's done in the central office to support the elementary schools. There is an amount that goes to in their budget. Typically, that amount is invoiced, say quarterly, to those schools, and it says, oh, don't forget, Hampshire Regional or the Hampshire District paid on your behalf this amount of money, please pay us back. And that did not happen last year. So in 2024, there were central office costs that were not invoiced to the municipal elementary schools, and neither were they paid. So now we're into 2025. So those bills will become prior year bills. So that invoice, if it's prepared or when it's prepared, would be presented to each school, and it would be a prior year bill. You're used to having prior year bills that come through your annual town meeting or special town meeting warrants, but they're usually $200, $1,000 for bills that didn't come in on time. This is something that we just noticed and will have to be taken care of. And we've spoken to Scott, we've spoken to John Lumber about it, and indicated that we have to come up with a number so that you can put it on your next warrant.
Right.
So I don't know if you had that, if you had that coming attractions at some point.
Is this something that Bradley identified as already encumbered or funds set aside in anticipation?
No, this would be separate.
Yeah.
Sounds like it should be on auto pay, but
I agree with you. I think we have to look at a number of things in the coming year, and one of them is, why don't we just treat it the way we treat the assessments to the regional schools? Just have a bill, it's out there, and you just pay it quarterly, just the way you do the assessments.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention that, because that's another big oops, and needs to be taken care of.
So could we have any hope that with the 6.8, whatever, 6.8 assessment change, that might get a little bit lower once you get
Yes.
all the full revenues in, right? This is not our final number by any means.
No.
This is our worst case scenario.
I would like to believe so.
That gives me a little bit of comfort.
Yeah, I mean, I think the school committee doesn't want to see assessments as high, and so the question is are we just relying on additional revenue, or are we changing the budget?
Mhm.
Changing expenses?
I think the additional revenue for those recurring revenues is reasonable. I think to rely too much on the revenues, there's a balance. And I think that has to be considered by, I'm sure the school committees will be thinking about that.
Right, well, we don't want to repeat what happened at Norris years ago when they used all of their school choice balances. So we always use whatever we're expecting to come in a given year, but there's balances from previous years, and we try to leave a hefty balance in there so that we can make choices. Because we don't want to be in a position where we don't have any ability to lower the assessments using that.
And so you have a lot of information.
We do. Thank you for
I'm
providing
going
us.
to give you this, just because if you want to know what the central office is spending their money on, it actually is in
Oh,
here.
Thank you. You got it.
Like joking on this.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you.
All right.
Is there a rough estimate of the unbilled allocations for the central office for the municipal portion?
I think it's going to be, for Southampton, it'll be somewhere between 425 and 500,000. And so that was appropriated last year. And so theoretically, you should be under your budget by that amount. And we're working with all the accountants, Bradley, that's one thing that I don't think happened either, where there should be a reconciliation every quarter between the school department and with the accountants. And that hasn't happened consistently.
And that's where we got off track with a lot of the grant money and so forth happening
Yeah.
as well. So that's another issue, so. Good, yeah. Yep, you can do a set right there, because there'll be another finance person coming. Yep, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you for coming in and giving us this overview. At least we'll have a little bit of homework to sit down and read through all this, but,
And then the next
Thanks.
time is going to be March 10th, I believe, at Hampshire Regional. So to the extent that you can come to that,
Okay, the
I
10th.
think it's great because you hear all of the questions
Yeah.
and you get other people's perspective. And also, you get a more linear presentation. This one I hopped around
Sure,
just
yeah.
because we had limited time.
yeah, no, great.
And I think you also see that school committee does not rubber stamp anything.
Yeah.
Ever.
Exactly. Good. All right. Well, thank you very much for giving us that overview and presenting all this stuff for us. Appreciate it. All right.
I think this person may be a short one.
Oh, there we go. There you go. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I think you're good. Okay. All right. Everybody okay for 2 seconds? A break? Quick stretch break, but we gotta keep going. We can't let you
Gonna stand
too
up.
long. You can stand up and stretch, but I don't want to lose you. We got a little bit more to go before we get into.
Should I read warrants in this gap?
Well, have you signed? Have you signed?
Here they come, special delivery. Thanks for working with me. Everyone else's.
All right, how are we gonna do this? Okay, so we need to open it, well,
Yeah, if you want
let's talk about
to,
the revenue and expense reports for everyone.
yeah, we can skip those and,
Can we just say how how close we are? What revenues up until when?
yep, Bradley, you're all set through December, so, yep, yep, all set. So, and then I'll just do 2 weeks until March 4th for the warrant.
All right, we're gonna get started, guys. Sorry, please find a chair, thank you. Pick up a couple extra chairs. We've got a few more issues on the agenda here, so we'll get to you guys in a minute. my able bodies come back in. Yeah, so actually, Steve, why don't you go ahead and read those warrants while I agree with you, do that while we're ready.
Sure. Since our last appearance,
Yeah,
we
okay,
have the following activity.
okay.
Warrant W25-29 in the amount of $676,810.16. Followed by P25-30 in the amount of $350,468.36. PD25-30, the amount of $63,056.99. PD 25-30A was $277,397.99. PD 25-30B is $318.71. W25-31 is $1,557,231.88. Lastly, payroll 25-32, the amount is $372,960.58. These are all warrants pending.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Gotcha.
Okay, we'll go back up to the agenda. We've got a couple more other items just to finish up before we get into the budget hearings, as it turns out. So revenue and expense reports, just very briefly. We won't go through them, but where are we in terms of our dates of where we are with revenues to finish up wherever we are with last fiscal year as well as this fiscal year, obviously. So
Bradley has completed the revenues up until December. We've input them into our revenue sheet this morning, so we'll have that for everyone next week. Now we just got to work on January, make sure we don't fall backwards.
Okay. And then everything is all set in terms of revenues and expense for last fiscal year, but we're still waiting on the school, I take it, for reconciliation stuff? Yeah? Okay. In order to close the books on last fiscal year.
Hopefully we can, knock on wood, get something for special town meeting.
I hope so. All right. Okay, speaking of special town meeting, we need to vote to open the warrant. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we need a motion to open the warrant for the special town meeting slated for March 22nd. Could somebody
I
make
move
that?
to open the warrant for special town meeting scheduled for March 22nd.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Want to give us a little overview of what's on the
Yep.
list so far?
Oh, sorry, I lost it. It's not in the nicest state. It's literally a draft, but
A little bit bigger, maybe?
sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
So the OPM is obviously the first one for the Public Safety and Senior Center. We have the investment committee that we've talked about before for the trust funds with the investment.
Move that to the left a little bit, then we can all see that. There we go. Thank you.
The treasurer has two requests, approved investor rule and the OPED declaration of trust that we weren't able to get to last annual town meeting. The moderator would like to point out the finance committee being appointed rather than elected. We have some highway transfer of funds, an unpaid bill, as Don mentioned. The fire safe grant back from FY22, we have to reimburse the state for. A bylaw change for annual town meeting being put back onto a Saturday. I'm gonna have a request for legal budget. Conservation Commission has amendments into the bylaw that they're working on. Then the bylaw committee has 1, 2, 3, 4 right now.
You can take off the wetlands, that's the same thing.
Oh,
You got
okay.
bylands, yeah, got wetlands twice. One of those can go
Just reduced. Okay. Highway, and we're gonna have to talk about that one with Randall a little bit, but a heating system repair that he's been trying to get onto for capital. And then the busing fees, which Don had mentioned. A lot of these we can actually wrap together in a consent agenda, so that's where we stand right
So
now.
our department's still able, and committee's still able to put in requests
Mhm.
until, did you have a deadline on that? I'm sorry.
March 4th, I would close the warrant officially, but I think mostly everything's in.
then we've got to now put this all in the legal language of the draft warrant motions, et cetera. Right?
Mhm.
That will take a little time, and have
Hearing, hearing.
KP Law take a look at all that. So this is a pretty heavy agenda too for a special town meeting, actually, so. Okay.
Scott, can you just quickly give me a summary of the change of the finance committee? I'm a little bit ignorant on that.
So right now it's elected. This would change it to being appointed by the town moderator, like most communities have it as an appointment by the moderator. Very few have it actually elected.
Does that mean it just chooses people? What does that mean?
Well, there's a little bit more of a process usually. It's like just like how the select board would appoint a committee.
Oh, okay.
So
Just from my understanding, does that mean the moderator makes the selection
Mhm.
based on applications or based on recommendations from
yes, that's
qualified people?
generally that's the way it works. Yeah.
More details to come, but yeah, it's
Does
true.
the
A lot of
moderator-
different towns do not have elected positions. We have an awful lot of elected committees
Yes,
in this town,
right.
which is very hard to
Yes, we know.
get people elected, especially for 3 years or 5 years in a couple of cases, like Parks Commission. And so consideration of making it an appointed committee rather than a,
Is there any other committees in our town that have, any other boards or committees that the moderator makes the appointments to
Not yet.
at the current time?
no,
No, but it's the standard throughout the state that most moderators make appointments to, like the personnel committee, the finance, or the the general committee. So yeah, it's usually commonplace for town moderators to do that.
we'll talk about it more. All right. Okay, do we need to then, the warrant is open, so we're still receiving
Yep.
things in, so it's not closed yet, it's still open. Okay.
Right.
All right, perfect. We can move on to the next agenda item then? Yeah? Do we need, we don't need to vote to close this, right?
That would be somewhere around March
Right.
3rd.
March 4th. Yeah.
Okay, I
Yeah.
see. Okay.
Okay, next one up then would be just an update on the land use planning. You all had a internal meeting yesterday sometime?
Yep, earlier today went very well. We had the internal meeting, and we're looking at, just a reminder, the public will be on February 27th at 6 o'clock. Yeah.
And that we're planning on having Easthampton Media record that. It won't be live streamed, it'll be recorded. I understand that the format of the meeting is going to end up having some breakout into smaller discussions, so that may be a little bit challenging in terms of how they actually, decide to film some of that, but we'll do our best to get as much as we can recorded so that those that might not be able to make it will be able to at least see what happened at that point in time. Okay. All right, Green Community Grant, I think you mentioned early on, we're basically done with all of the projects and we just have to put in our reimbursement request, that's it?
Yep.
From the state, and then that allows us to have more money to spend on new green community projects, or we have to apply again?
We'd have to apply again, but hopefully it'll save us enough money through our electrical bills, or we can do some other projects.
Okay.
I move approval for a one-day alcohol permit at Conan Park, August 23rd, 2025, for the Southampton 250 anniversary committee.
All right.
Second.
Thank you. Yes, I was going to bring that up. So that's basically both use of the park and then a one-day alcohol. It'll be a BYOB, obviously, at the park. I would further, if we don't mind, I would like to think about requesting, I will request, if we could possibly consider waiving the permit fees, because we're paying out of one pocket of the town into the other pocket of the town, which seems rather
That was in my motion. That was in my motion.
If we could waive the fees, that would be great, because then we don't have to make extra work for Bradley to have a set of paperwork going back and forth.
So moved.
Take it in his account and put it right back in the same account again, so.
Is that what you seconded?
Yeah, is that an amended motion there, is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, anybody, any further
Secondly amended.
questions or discussions about that? So this will be a August 23rd event at the Conant Park with a band.
And you're going to bring the biggest cooler.
Yeah, right. Indeed. All right, very good. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right, thank you. All right, nothing much else to say about the 250th. I mentioned it at the beginning of the meeting. We've got some events coming up, and we've got a Facebook page that people are starting to catch on to a little bit more, and the website as well. We're trying to keep that updated. There's also an Instagram account, so everything related to the 250th. And you'll find it also in various newsletters around town. We're trying to do our best to get publicity out there. So our next event is a book club meeting on Thursday at the library, and then I believe we have the Snowbox Derby on Saturday, 1 o'clock at Churchill. So everybody with their Snowbox Derbies, or not, or come with anything, right? Cardboard or anything, yeah, to come on down to Churchill. So meet at Churchill behind the Congregational Church. And then our other events will be in March. So very good. Okay, any other business that can't wait until the March 4th meeting? Anything offhand? All right, so we are going to actually adjourn this meeting and open up a new meeting. Is that what you want to do here?
No, you can just continue.
Okay.
The finance committee just has to.
Okay, I've got just weird paper here then.
I just posted it for 3 separate ways just to make sure postings
We're
are
going to
okay.
continue.
We also
All
don't
right.
have a quorum, so.
Oh, you don't?
Oh,
Okay.
that's right.
Yeah, oh, okay, yeah, you don't.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we will, we'll continue on. We have, next select board meeting will be February 25th, another budget hearing meeting with finance committee, and then March 4th. All right, so with that, we will continue on, and we will have the finance committee join in. We've got Doug and Becky here, so we've got 2 of our finance folks. Thank you for coming. And I think our first presentation will be Council on Aging. You may have a seat at the table and tell Scott what slide you'd like, and we've got them all on.
Sure, so
on
I
here.
emailed you a little
Yep.
while ago.
So just a couple of points. As presented, the personal cost would be 100% funded by the general fund, which has not been the case in the past, where it's been using grant money to use it for the either ARPA or state grant money for the personnel. There are additional hours for part-time employees, but everyone is still under the benefit eligibility. The operating costs that have been requested are actually below what their costs have generally been historically, so it's actually underfunded. They've been relying on grant money for that. And one thing just to keep in mind is thinking about costs associated with the new building in the future. So that's going to be something that we're going to have to hopefully budget for in the next year or two.
And everybody in there, for the left-hand side of your package, you've actually got the printouts of the, and I think you should have them, I hope, in the finance package. Okay. But we've got them all here on the screen, so where do you want to start? You want to do the year overview, or where do you want to start?
We can start, it kind of goes through everything.
Okay,
This, yeah.
all right.
So just a general overview, feels weird, not clicking. So mission of the Southampton Senior Center, we are a very active center, provide information, referrals, and access to community resources. A big addition over the past year has been Medicare and Shine counseling. I'm the Shine counselor at the Council on Aging. We have public benefits counseling, so SNAP is basically food stamps, the EBT card. LIHEAP is the low income heat and energy assistance program. So it used to be called fuel assistance, but now since a lot of the energy bills are also electric, it's a more inclusive name. There's a lot of housing applications that we assist with. Transportation, we have our own Fritta van that transports Southampton residents and activities programming. And I had to plug in there that we have more than 2,100 residents in town that are over the age of 60, with another 100 coming up by the end of this year. So. Happy birthday. So this is our staff. I popped our hours up here just as a little cheat sheet. So I'm Kate, I'm the director and the Shine counselor at the center. We have a volunteer coordinator. That's 14 hours a week. The rest of the staff are part-time. Andrea, Pamela Conitz, our program coordinator. We have Tim Huber and Bill Kalita, Fritta drivers. They are not based on hours, and we're based on days, which vary each week depending on what we have on the schedule. Darlene is our administrative assistant. She comes in and does data entry for 4 hours per week, specifically related to some of our Fritta rides and answers phones. And we do have a staff vacancy that we are currently accepting applications and interviewing for the outreach worker. Similar to Town Hall, we are open Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 4, but we do have van rides also available Monday through Friday, so they are actively working on Friday when we are closed. This is a snapshot of our regular programming and activities. It happens either every week or once a month or bi-weekly. Every day we have access to exercise equipment. We have a pretty big book nook, outreach appointments, puzzles, coffee, tea.
Just so that TV,
sure.
just,
Yep.
TV folks theoretically, this is being recorded, so
Absolutely.
I don't know what people can see at home, but we'll try.
So we do have on the specific highlights, Highland Valley Lunch Distribution. We have a partnership with Highland Valley Elder Services. They deliver grab-and-go lunches for us, and it's been a very popular program over this past year. Some of the, you could, if you want to go to the next slide.
Sorry.
So these are some of our special programming opportunities that we've had. Scott made us pancakes in September, so that was very well attended. We have monthly luncheons with our friends with the Southampton Council on Aging. They've been extremely active over the past couple months and have so much more to come over the next year. We've been partnering with the Southampton Fire Department for falls prevention classes, public safety. We've been trying to get a lot of informational talks out there so folks understand the resources that are available not only in Southampton but the surrounding communities. And it's been nice to have more art and culture and just information in general brought into the senior center. It's on one of our information sheets, but our attendance has grown more than 20% in the past year. So it's a nice highlight. So if you want to go to the next one. So this is in just the general narrative. Some of our big highlights, like I just mentioned, our attendance numbers have increased by more than 20%. We've launched several new programs. We have a public health nurse coming in once a month. We have new watercolor classes. We have a new class coming in that started last year. It's a partnership with Cooley Dickinson. And then any opportunities that we have for an increased socialization and resource sharing, we try and highlight. We distributed 1,376 of those Highland Valley meals last year. And we had 1,387 trips on the Frida van. So those are for medical appointments, grocery shopping, blood work, any of the field trips that we have. We brought our veterans to the Big E on the Veteran Appreciation Day. Our volunteers have logged more than 2,100 hours, and I say that because we're trying to get them to log as many of their hours as possible. It's easy to be there for 5 hours and forget to pop them in. So, and one partnership I definitely want to highlight, Triad program, which is a partnership with the Hampshire County Sheriff's Office, in addition to the Police Department, Northwestern District Attorney's Office, Public Health Department, and the Fire Department. There's a lot of resources that we are able to combine. There's the Winter Wellness Check and the Resident Reassurance Program that the Chief is hugely instrumental on and has been a very important project in the past year, especially as folks are living alone, unfortunately. It's a check-in program, so it gives us a little bit of accountability and peace of mind for family. Today we had 13 calls alone for things related to Triad for durable medical equipment, sand refill, so shout out to Randall for refilling the sand this morning. And then also for lock boxes and reflective numbers. So Triad's been great. So some of the challenges that we face, we desperately need the funding for staff salaries and increased hours. As of right now, I am the only full-time staff person there. If you combine the hours of our other staff members, it just covers enough hours in case I'm out sick, I take vacation, need to take time off, or even just have a backup for a second set of hands. We have a lack of office space. There's technically 4 of us working in one office, soon to be 5 when we hire our outreach worker, which makes it extremely difficult for private meetings and accommodations for current staffing needs. We often use the select board room to have those private conversations, Medicare counseling, housing applications. Lack of event space, we are one room. We try and set up both sides of the room. This Thursday, as an example, we have our Healthy Bones and Balance class at 10 a.m. And then Michelle has her veterans coffee hour on the other side of the room that we set up. So that starts almost as soon as the exercise class ends. So we try and do back-to-back programming as much as we can and best utilize this space as possible. The primary large challenge is our FRIDA van drivers are funded through a reimbursement process through FRIDA. We pay them through their paycheck, but then get reimbursed. That's something that Bradley does every single month. But all of our staff are the ones that answer the calls, schedule the rides, manage the applications, follow up with the folks. If they have to leave a message over the weekend, it's very time consuming, very time sensitive. We probably get close to 5 to 10 calls a day, just trying to schedule rides throughout the month. And I love it when they call ahead because it makes life a lot easier, but just trying to figure out the logistics so we can best support our folks in town. So But with Frida, only the van drivers are reimbursed. We don't have any additional staff reimbursement for the time taken on that. So this is just annual funding and revenue sources that we do have. The state formula grant, this year we were allotted $28,724. It is an average of $15 per person per individual at 16 over in town. So it's a set cost based off our residents. Funded by EOEA, known as Executive Office of Elder Affairs, which has just been renamed as the Executive Office of Aging and Independence. So it's only up there once, so I don't have to say it. So that's for the fiscal calendar year. They have not designated what the allocation will be for next year. Hopefully it's still the $15 and it does not go down, but keep our eyes on that. Council on Aging operating expenses funded by the town of Southampton. Last year's numbers were $1,829. We're asking for $2,500 this year, just given the increase in prices for printer, toner cartridges, all that other fun stuff. Budgeted salaries for this past year, $65,515. We do not have folks pay a membership fee in order. It's a free service for folks to be able to come and attend. There are 2 specific classes that we have that are regular on our calendar. Chair yoga is $5 a class. Line dancing is $3 a class. If they came every single week with an average of 8 to 10 people, it'd be roughly about $2,900 for revenue that we have back in to help pay for some of the class fees. And then I popped in there, it's the FY22 COA earmark. That is what is currently funding the outreach position. Once those funds run out, they are done. So that is another reason why the outreach salary line is in our request for next fiscal year. So just to have it as external funding, we don't get double from state formula grant, but I did pop it on here twice for this past year. We were lucky to get 3 specific service incentive grants from Executive Office of Elder Affairs and the Massachusetts Councils on Aging. We had Memory Cafe, Outreach and Marketing, which both of those allowed us to bring in additional programming, performance groups, pay for food. The marketing of the COA allowed us to create the welcome packet that was in the folder for this meeting, along with, it paid for the outreach laptop in the office. And those 2 were very instrumental for how we operated last year. Our senior center modernization grant ends at the end of FY25. So far with that, we've been able to purchase the beautiful shed that is out on the hill behind the senior center. We recently purchased a mobile television so that, like for example, for our veteran services meeting Thursday, Michelle's able to do a Zoom at that part of the room so we can better utilize the space that has full internet accessibility. We will be buying a looping system to assist folks with hearing aids. It is portable, so we will be able to use it in town hall and in other functions if needed. And then we're also going to be buying some patio furniture outside to kind of expand our footprint of the center in nicer weather. The Friends of the Southampton Council on Aging is our 501c3 organization that helps support the senior center. Last year, they provided $4,152, and I love the 75 cents on there, for various supplies, food, anything that we basically needed. The Friends came in and helped support us. Their main opportunity is to create socialization opportunities. They have those monthly luncheons, but they are raising money both for the senior center, but also for the future of the senior center, the new building. And then the AED purchase and installation, put in a request for ARPA funds for that. We will be getting an AED installed at the senior center, hopefully in the next upcoming weeks. They're still waiting on it coming in, but it has been ordered. So, similar to what Scott had mentioned at the start of the meeting, Town of Southampton currently funds 100% of the director and administrative assistant salaries and 50% of the program coordinator salary. So this estimated number is with the salary increases that were presented to you last month. Remaining 50% of the program coordinator salary and 100% of the volunteer coordinator salary are funded by that state formula grant. So if you think about it, we only get $28,700 per year, and $25,000 is taken out by salaries, which only allows us to have $3,524 remaining for 12 months of programming, supplies, food, and additional operational expenses. That's a huge hit. And I will say, like, even the hours that our staff are working, we are flying around the center every single day. So for us, we're doing what we can to best support the needs. There's still so much more of an opportunity for us to do more there. But freeing up that state formula grant will allow us to better support our 2,100 seniors in town. And then, like I mentioned, the FRTA driver salaries are reimbursed monthly by FRTA. So this is a year in review. A lot of this information I've already gone over. The one thing that I did not mention is there's 65 different program offerings. So if we have walking club on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, that's only listed as one specific program offering. So 65 over the course of the year has been fantastic. We're looking to do much more, including hopefully therapy dogs in the future once the weather gets nicer. And then it's highlighting the external funding and grants awarded down at the bottom. So I think that's it. I spoke a lot, so my apologies. Do you have any questions?
So let's see the budget itself.
Sure.
So their budget actually isn't too much. Most of it, as Kate said, is focused more towards the salaries. A couple of things. This again is 100% funded by the general funds. The two freighter drivers, we have a revolving account that they're paid out of, so that isn't actually impacting the budget at all. For operating expenses, it's just that $2,500 that they're requesting. So although it's one of our most forward-facing and active departments, it's actually one of the simplest budgets that we have.
Could you back up just a second? So if I heard you correctly, the 116,000 represents if
Actual
everything
cost.
were budgeted from the town, not including grant money.
Right, exactly.
So this is 100% town, if we took on 100% of everybody's salary?
Yes.
Not, okay.
Now, we do have grant money available that we'll probably use, and we'll switch onto revenues for later on in the budget cycle, but this is just to show you an actual picture of how much the request is.
Thank you. These net budgets are mind-boggling.
I have one question. So, moving the 25,000 or whatever from currently the grant to the town for the salaries, what's the benefit of doing that as opposed to, say, just asking for programming money?
So specifically with the state formula grant, its dedicated purpose is to be able to provide programming and services. The nice part about it is that money rolls over if we don't use it from the state formula grant. So last year we did have some additional funds that were left over because some of our programming was charged to the Memory Cafe or it was charged to the outreach grant. And because it is a rolling over fund, I'm not sure what the technical term is for it, we are able to utilize it that next fiscal year as opposed to it going back into the general fund if we don't utilize those funds. If that makes sense. Our hope too is that grant money, given the certain state of things, could go away at any time. I would hate for us to have to cut our staff back even though we're going to be providing hopefully the same type of service if their salary lines go away because we don't have it on town salaries. I think it's a hard balance in the sense that we want to be like, even just having people there is a resource to be able to provide what we need to for the town. Having their salaries on the town funds allows us to do that because hopefully there are other grant opportunities for us to go out for and apply for if the state formula grant isn't going to be as much or might not be a thing in the future. I don't want to jinx it at all saying all of this, but I think also having the salary lines on the town-specific budget just shows the town's commitment to our demographic that we're serving as well. So having those funds open up on the state formula grant provides us a much larger opportunity to be able to provide additional services coming in and additional resources in the community. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Similarly, the $2,500 is not reflective of the actual cost to run it.
Oh,
so
absolutely not.
Yeah.
I keep pointing that
And
out.
it's why we're so reliant on like the Friends group to help subsidize some of those costs, so we don't keep pulling from the state formula grant. There's a lot of overlapping resources that we use, so when we order napkins in bulk and forks and knives for lunch distribution, a lot of that are the things that are either left over or purchased by the Friends for their lunches. So we try and make it be a cohesive and collaborative effort in that respect, but everything is so expensive, and we at least, especially for our events, try to have coffee and some little nashi type items. Doing a dozen donuts is more than a trip at this point, so.
Do you have a sense of what your actual, or what your potential budget would be for that, for expenses, rather than 25? I mean, what's a more realistic figure? I mean,
Honestly,
assuming that you had 4,000 from the Friends, for example.
yeah.
So I'm assuming that's a piece of that, but I mean,
I
you're getting a
think-
lot of grant money right now that is helping you, but it
Yeah.
really, it helps, but it also gives a false impression about
Right.
how well you can operate with the meager funds that you're getting, right?
Yeah, so I've looked through our ordering for the past year. It's very hard because when we have the grants, we're doing things specific to the purposes of the grant. So we're
Right.
probably using more printer cartridges. We just ordered 2 of our color cartridges and they were $600. Those are gonna last us maybe the next 3 to 4 months if we don't print a ton of flyers. Everything's just so expensive. Honestly, if we were to do closer numbers, if we're talking about food and, I mean, even getting the floors redone and cleaned and polished this year, that was about $1,200. I think it'd be probably closer to the $10,000 range. But there's a lot of things that we are doing in support of our programs, which to me makes more sense charging that to the state formula grant if it's for those specific programs. I will say it's been hard to kind of figure out what those numbers look like, because if we're ordering a ton of cartridges because we need to get flyers out for specific memory cafe programming, those toner cartridges were purchased for that specific purpose. So it's kind of hard to tell that if we're doing all this advertising for those programs, what it would look like if we were just kind of moving forward. But I would say it'd probably be closer to the $10,000 range.
And then just back on salaries, just I want to be sure that your narrative, I think, was pretty clear. The numbers were confusing me originally, but now I get it. So what you've got in the narrative, I just want to repeat it. So the director and the admin assistant are fully funded by the town. So there's
Correct.
2 that are fully funded by the town.
Yeah.
And then your program person is only about 65% thereabouts from the town. So that's not fully funded by us. And then right now your outreach, your volunteer coordinator's on the formula grant, which hopefully for the 10 to 14 hours that you're looking for, the formula grant ought to be able to cover that for the foreseeable future. I mean, if you had to move, if we couldn't do all of this on the town budget, where would your priorities be? I mean, to me, I would think your outreach worker is more at risk than your volunteer coordinator, for example.
Right, I would say outreach and program coordinator. Given how busy we are, the program coordinator being on site more often than not is beneficial overall. And then definitely the outreach worker, given the fact once that money is gone, it's gone. So.
Did you mention that that position's unfilled currently?
Currently, yes.
And through all of FY25, was that also an open position?
For a portion of it, I will say I was in that role through, was it September, I started as director. It's been vacant, because open enrollment for Medicare took up about 70 hours of my time each week for 3 months. So we are actively searching for it. There is a savings in that. So say we were to hire somebody for March, the funds that are left, it's about $27,000 left in that specific account. It's $27,061 is the remaining balance for the earmark.
So did we draw down on that in FY25 because the position was unfilled, the ARPA funds that you mentioned in the narrative?
So I had about, was it $2,700 that was paid out for my salary for July and August.
Okay.
Right now it's on hold. Those funds are specific to that position, so we're not necessarily able to reutilize them for another type of role. So it would give us, say we were to hire somebody as of March 1st or mid-March, it would cover their salary through the end of FY25 and then would cover them through FY26 at the estimated salary line that's on here. If they did come in at a higher salary rate, the money would run down quicker. So.
Yeah, the ARPA money's all gonna be spent by the end of December calendar year '26.
I have a couple of questions, just a clarification. So the reimbursement per senior, $15, that's based on population, it's not based on utilization, right? So you just
Yes.
figure out how many
Thank
people are
goodness. Yes.
60 and over. And therefore, I happen to know there's people that come from other towns and utilize it. It's a wonderful
It's a
center.
great point.
It's a great place, friendly people, super committed staff, and the only drawback is there's no space, you know, big time. So I just didn't know how that worked. We can't go to another town and say, you have 10 seniors that show up here on a very regular basis,
Right.
give us your money. We can't do that. But on the other hand, there's loads of people who are of the age group that don't even go there for any variety of reasons,
Yeah, that's a
right?
great
I just
point.
want to clarify
No,
that.
thank you for mentioning that. So I will say that a number of our people that attend our programs come from outside towns. A lot of them are from hill towns, a number of them are from Westhampton and Easthampton. I think the great part about our center is that we don't have to designate friendships at town lines. With the Easthampton Council on Aging, they give priority to Easthampton residents, as they should, given how large their city is. But if you are from Southampton, you get put on a wait list for different events. It's hard to have those socialization opportunities if you don't open it up to a larger group of people. As a Shine counselor, I'm not allowed to dictate. I can only handle Southampton residents. We have a number of folks coming in from the hill towns, from Westhampton, because there aren't designated Shine counselors at each of the councils on aging. For us, it's a great opportunity to grab more people in. There's more people coming to the Friends luncheons. There's more people hopefully in support of the new senior center when we start building it. I find it to be a great opportunity to bring in more of our little bubble that we have in Southampton. But it is true, we do utilize, the center is utilized by a number of residents outside of Southampton.
Okay. So the second thing is, given that, you know, we're looking at the fact that some of the salary is going to show up in the general fund budget, what about some of the other things being covered under the general fund? Like she mentioned, the cartridges for the printer costing a ton of money. I think you're the only color printer in the
They have
town
one
hall.
now too.
Yeah,
Oh,
we have one now,
I didn't know about that.
There's one down the hall now.
Now we know.
Yeah.
Okay, but I just didn't know if there's another way to kind of put some of their things into, and, you know, I do know that their floors look wonderful, better than the
They
floors
look
in other places of town, or they did look
They
wonderful
look
anyway.
wonderful.
But I just didn't know if some of that can be spread across the general fund.
Eventually, I would like to get like an IT budget that would take over all the cell phones, all the copiers, all of the regular maintenance stuff, so that each individual department doesn't have to kind of worry about that themselves. It just makes more sense to have one general fund for everything. Instead of having 5 different Verizon accounts, we could have one and probably get a discount, something like that.
Yeah.
Same thing with like copier leases, things like that.
So that's like a down the road kind of, you know, idea of economy of scale kind of thing, yeah?
Yeah. And I think it'd be
Cost
easier to-
efficiencies ideas.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, that
But one
kind
of
of give away.
one of the obstacles to that is just getting everything into a uniform thing, so that, you know, we go through
Right.
Novus for printers, it's a common thing, so that we can just order a stock of toilet paper, for example, and not have 5 different dispensers and have to find different sizes and different things, one for the police station and one for the library. And, you know, I spent my last Friday on it, trying to find paper towels that are no longer fit certain ones. So, yeah.
Okay.
So,
One thing I will say too is we, like, at least since I've stepped into my role, we've tried to do a really good job of eliminating waste.
Good.
And using things that are a little bit more evergreen. For example, the table covers, we used to use plastic table covers all the time. We have purchased they say they're stain proof, but they're not. Like the ones that we can wash. So we bring them home on the weekends, we wash them and we bring them back.
You
It
wash them in
saves
your
so
own
much.
houses, yeah.
We save so much money just not having to utilize
Yeah.
paper, like the plastic tablecloths.
And
Because those are insanely expensive.
Environmentally better as
And they're
well.
so much better. They're
Yeah.
not in the landfills. And the ones that we do use, like for last week, we're saving for the watercolor class so we can have those for the next event next week. So we're trying to do our best at trying to figure out how to minimize costs and be a little bit more forward thinking with how we're utilizing our
And there are
resources.
limitations. I think I know the answer to this, because I personally am not in favor of all the plastic ware, you know,
Right.
like forks and knives and spoons. But on the same token, is the health department okay with you washing
for tonight? Is
I believe so,
they
yeah.
are?
So we do have a dishwasher downstairs, so
Okay.
they don't have to take my washing skills. But we do have a dishwasher, so we're using it a lot more than I think I've ever seen since I've been there, which is great, but it's also, there's not a lot of storage to handle an industrial size area of silverware and glasses and that type of thing. So wherever we can be creative, we will be, yeah. But I agree with you, I hear all it.
And I'm going to say, we have a great Friends of Southampton Council on Aging.
It's fantastic.
Because we have a great chair of the Friends of Southampton Council.
Fantastic.
Who happens to be? Who is it? Yeah, Francine.
And a great chair of our board too. I know I put it on the sides, we're so lucky to have the support of our boards. They've been absolutely phenomenal for us, so.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? Dan, Stephen?
No, it's good.
Okay,
Okay,
I think that's it.
thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kate. Good job.
See you next year.
You never know, we may call you back for questions.
Oh, great. Okay. I'll have that flyer for you tonight, though. I just got the text back. Our listserv's down, which we found out this weekend.
Okay.
Good luck, sir.
Excuse the wind. Do you have HDMI or USB-C?
It should be HDMI.
I'll sit in the back. Over.
It's kind of jacket. Are you wearing a tie and a vest?
I am wearing a tie.
And a vest?
No vest, no.
Oh,
Is the tie bulletproof?
The tie is not.
Stephen thought it was.
The chest is bulletproof, though.
Hey.
I don't know where that goes.
What's that? I'm in, right?
All right.
No.
Yeah,
Where do you?
I'm on. I'm on.
Oh, you connected it.
Yep.
All right. Keep going in a second, so we'll have our police chief for the police department's budget coming up. And that will be our last presentation for this evening, is that correct? I believe, yep.
So Janet wasn't the representative.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. I want to just, I provided a PowerPoint presentation here, and I went into a lot of minutia like I do every year as far as the expenses and wages, because I want to make sure I articulate everything, because I have a larger budget than most. And this year included there, in wages in particular, there's about a 4.6% increase, which is about a 2.6% variance if we were going to go with a COLA of 2%. And I wanted to explain how that occurred and why it occurred so everyone understands. So just a little background on the police department. We have 12 full-time sworn officers. One officer currently is in the military. It's important to know that he returns from the military to duty to the police department in April of next fiscal year. So that's going to include an increase because the last 2 years I have not had to budget his salary. We have sworn part-time membership, 3 officers. We had 4. Now we just lost 2 in the last 2 weeks, last week rather. One got a full-time position in another department, and another one has moved to closer to his full-time position, and he can't commit to Southampton. So currently now we have 2 part-time officers, and that's important because I've explained in the past the attrition of part-time officers since the police reform. Like I said, the police reform came with a lot of very important and good reforms. However, an unintended consequence was part-time officers, and it's affected smaller departments, especially out here in Western Mass, significantly. It's affected us. We have 2 restricted part-time membership officers. These are retired officers. We don't pay for their uniforms. They just work road details, that's it. We don't pay for anything for them. And our non-sworn membership is 1 part-time administrative assistant. We share that with the fire department. We share her with the fire department. All sworn full-time and part-time officers' work conditions fall under a collective bargaining agreement, and that's important to know. So just some functions of the police department here. Our daily functions, we respond and investigate crimes, proactive and reactive patrols. We address quality of life complaints. That could be neighborhood disputes, barking dogs, anything along those lines. We respond to medical calls, enforce and mitigate unsafe traffic operation. Administrative functions, and these are just some of them. We issue firearms permits, solicitation permits, public records request, sex offender registry, use of force reporting, and crime reporting. One thing I want to notice is our public outreach is starting to increase significantly, and that's a good thing, right? Since the 2020 reform, federal reform, the culture of policing went from warrior to guardian, and we're trying to evolve as well to that. And what I mean by warrior, police officers were considered, it was just traffic enforcement, enforcing crime, making arrests. That is evolving in a good way, and public outreach now is increasing. So that's that guardian side of us. And part of our important programs, we have the resident reassurance program. We have winter wellness checks that our officers do after any winter storm or winter event. There's certain residents that we check in with. Handle with Care, we just signed an MOU with the Hampshire Regional School District, and what this is a program where if the police respond to any household or event where there might be some trauma involved in a child, we notify the school, and we don't give them specifics about it. All we say is, child John Doe, handle with care, and that gives the school that gives the school indication, like, if the child's acting out or might be quiet, there's because something happened at home. It doesn't give any specifics. We have a coalition with Triad. That includes the lock boxes. We install lock boxes. We install the street numbers. We distribute sand for seniors. We have a drug abuse response team that's called DART officers, and what that is whenever we have an overdose, or we know of somebody that has an addiction, we have officers that are trained, and they respond to the household, and they provide Narcan, they provide resources for addiction. We also have a veteran engagement team. This is new this year. The veteran engagement team is whenever officers respond to calls for services now, they ask anybody that's involved that they're a veteran, they're a resident of Southampton, and then we refer him to the veteran to the veteran engagement officer, and that officer will reach out to that person, provide them with resources, and actually stays in touch with them every 6 months, sends letters, phone calls, and just to see how they're doing. As we know, there's a lot of PTSD involved with veterans, and we receive a lot of calls for service with veterans with PTSD, and this is already helping us. We already have connections with certain veterans. Our veteran engagement officer is a veteran, so that works well. And we also do daily house checks, so when people are away on vacation, we will check on their houses. So that's just some of our functions as the police department.
Is the veteran engagement officer a part of the police department?
It's part of the police department, yes, yes. It's more of a it's a relationship that is consistent. So that officer is supposed to reach out to all the veterans that we have registered, and on every 6 months, reach out, either send a letter to that person or reach out. We were asked to become part of this team. It's currently Hadley and Easthampton, UMass, and Southampton that are in this this collaboration.
Could you go back to the previous slide? In terms of public outreach, this is fabulous, all these things you've got there. But what I'm wondering is, outside of PTSD, which is something related to service, usually or often 100%, but there are people with mental health disease and with mental disease. And I just wonder, does your staff get training around somebody who might
Absolutely.
have psychosis of some sort?
Yes,
or-
yes, they do.
and-
It's part of annual in-service
Okay.
training.
And have you developed protocols, not you, maybe your department, but I mean, protocols around the country where you don't treat them as criminals, you treat them as people that are maybe
Absolutely.
needing some support?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, absolutely. It's part of our policy.
Oh, okay.
It's part of our policy.
Okay.
In fact, oftentimes, if it doesn't require, if there's an action that was caused and it doesn't require an arrest, we refer them to hospital versus an arrest.
Okay.
But absolutely, that's part of in-service. We don't have clinicians that assigned to Southampton municipalities. A lot of them do.
Yeah.
Easthampton, for instance. We wouldn't have enough calls for service, but to have a regional clinician to respond to calls would make sense. It is increasing, especially our calls for mental health issues. Those calls are increasing, so for certain. One thing I also wanted to add here, just recently we have a working group that we just put together for scams. I would say about a month ago, 3 weeks to a month ago, and within 2 weeks we had about $150,000 of citizens in this town, residents in this town, scammed out of that much money. So we're working on Friday, we're meeting with bank security and asset protection from local banks, as well as I invited Kate from the Council on Aging, the police department, and my detective, and we're going to put a working group together to find out how we can do this, because we're realizing that social media and even just Council on Aging meetings relative to this, while it helps, it's not reaching everybody, not even close. And the two people that lost, one woman lost $50,000, and another a woman lost about $100,000 within. I'm sorry, a gentleman lost about $100,000. In fact, let me increase that. Within the last, about a week and a half ago, we had another woman lost about $100,000 over a span of 2 years from scams. They weren't involved in the Council on Aging, and they're not on social media. So what we're trying to do is we're putting this working group together to see if we can come up with a potential legislation and then introduce it to Senator Vilas and Representative Pease.
Well, and we ought to somehow get the word out around town.
Yes.
So however we can get the word out in terms of what to watch out for.
It is. You know, we can do it social media. We can have a forum. I'm planning on putting a forum together. This working group is going to try to determine what is the best practice.
Yeah.
So that's on our agenda this week.
In line of avoidance problems,
Yep.
the Handle with Care program sounds absolutely tremendous. And that's in response to some call out to a domestic.
It could be a domestic, it could be a child's parent or guardian went to the hospital. That's all traumatic. It could be a car accident, anything like that, where, instead of, staff will understand, like, if this child is not acting like normal, if there's a deviance in their behavior in school, this is the reason. There could be a reason, but there's confidentiality with this, so they do not. The staff has no idea what it is.
Right.
We would never tell them that there was a domestic violence
That's what I
incident
wanted to
there.
pick up on.
Yeah.
But there is a triggering
Yes.
something.
Right.
Do you have a similarly beneficial relationship with the schools where there's some concern about students'
Absolutely. Yes.
personal well-being or threat to others?
We meet with the school. We have meetings with the Hampshire Regional High School in particular, and we, with the DA's office and all the local chiefs from the district, as well as the DA's office and the Hampshire Regional School Administration meet and discuss just that, where we're seeing that certain children have a lot of interactions with police and how to respond to this. Certain children might, and I say children, but even somebody in high school, I don't mean nor school-age children, but people in the children in high school. It could be, we're seeing signs of a lot of drinking at the house, mental health issues, and we bring that up to the school. And so we all understand that if we have to put somebody on a certain list to watch, we do that.
Yeah, confidentiality is paramount, but we're talking about care.
It is,
Right.
yes.
That's good.
Yep.
Okay.
So the goals and initiatives, two here, and I have another one on the next page, but it's to maintain current level of services and staffing. So in calendar year 2023, we had 9,939 log entries. In calendar year 2024, it was 14,000. So we had a 45% increase in log entries. And also, obviously, public and officer safety. So that's why I want to maintain our current staffing.
Same definitions, a log entry doesn't...
A log entry does not necessarily, it means some form of action or act that had to be logged in our system. So it could be somebody coming in for, it could be a police officer running stopping a car. It could be somebody making a complaint. It could be an arrest. It could be a various, the categories are really broad.
Inclusive of some of the community activities?
Absolutely, yes, yeah, yes. So they increased significantly. Expanded out public outreach, obviously as needed and identified. Like I said, we just identified the outreach for scams. And to create and maintain a succession plan. This is something I want to make sure the board and the finance committee recognize. In the next 3 to 5 years, 4 officers of our department are eligible for retirement. And I guarantee you they're going to retire. So that's about 130 years of institutional knowledge. And I just began coming up with a plan for succession. And what I mean by that, and why this is important, is training. I have to get more officers that are coming up through the ranks, more training, so they can take over when we, inclusive, when we leave. So that's something that, that's a goal of mine, and I've already started that. I've had interviews with officers already, all the officers, to see where they want to be, where they want to go, what type of training they want, where they see themselves, and that's a plan that I have, but that plan is going to require financing because it's going to require training.
Where does that distribution lie, Chief? Is that, if I look here, is it yourself, the lieutenant, and then your next 2 sergeants?
So it would be,
across?
so it's myself, my lieutenant, and yes, the next 2 sergeants, yes.
So it's the whole.
Yes, it is, yes, yeah. So that's where, that is significant to me. I want to make sure that there's an easy transition when we all leave, whether it's a year apart, 2 years apart, but I want to make sure that the 4 of us just don't leave and then leave the town to, officers that aren't experienced or have the particular knowledge to continue. Some impacts in the budget, overtime expenditures, part-time shift hours from fiscal year 21 to 24 declined by 60%. So it went from that many hours, 4,100 hours approximately, to about 1,670 hours. This is still declining. As you know, I just lost 2 part-time officers. So for budgeted shift hours for fiscal year 26 was 1,100 hours I budgeted. The increase in overtime for shift coverage for use of accrued personal time off. So what happens is, in order to maintain that staffing level of 2 officers, when somebody used their personal day or any type of personal time off, the part-timers historically would always work that. We don't have that workforce anymore. So it has to be, the overtime budget has to be supplemented.
I have a question on that.
Yes.
So with the addition of the officer that's coming back from the military, will that help in any way?
It will reduce, but he doesn't come back until April.
The end of it, yeah.
Yes. But it will reduce it, and I can show you some data where we have a full-time officer that is working a split shift. It's a split shift on the days, on the evenings and midnights. And the reason why we have it on that shift is because most midnight officers are hard to fill with part-time midnight positions. It's also, sick time is often more used on midnights because they're worn out. And 4 to 12, that's where most of our officers have seniority. A lot of them prefer to be on that shift, and because they have more seniority, they have more vacation time. So we have that strategically placed, that officer strategically placed on the 2 shifts on the eves and 2 shifts on the days. Our fleet. This is concerning. So this is our fleet right now. This was as of, I think I this was probably around January 6th is when I put these numbers up here, so it's increased. But as you can see, our mileage in our cruisers is getting significant. This is our newest cruiser. About 25,000 miles a year per cruiser. Just an indication, in fiscal year 23, we spent about $5,350 in repairs. And what I mean by repairs is, I'm not talking about maintenance, I'm not talking about tires, I'm not talking about oil changes. That's repairs. The last fiscal year, it went up to $19,860. So the cruisers I've asked for, I put in for 2. I'm hoping that I can at least get 1, but just to give you an idea of where these are. And this car right here had a new transmission in last year. So we're putting money into cars that have a lot of mileage.
What has to happen going forward with requirements for hybrid or electric or anything like that?
There's no requirements. There are no requirements. We've done some research. The state police have to buy all hybrids, and their mechanics, we reached out to their mechanics, and their mechanics, there's still a lot of flaws with the hybrids, and there's been a lot of maintenance issues with them. So they because they have such a large fleet, we sought their advice, and they're suggesting that you don't necessarily go to a hybrid just yet. That was their suggestion.
Okay. So I think we ought to just double check with our green community grant parameters here, because we may be required to do something.
No, and again, if that's the case, I'm willing to take anything at this point, because it's getting tough.
So this is my question. A year or so ago at town meeting, I think our DPW person, Randall, said he needed a new truck and got a brand new truck. And somebody came up to me and said, why is it we buy brand new? Isn't there a market of lightly used vehicles? And I didn't ask about cruisers, but that, and I'm responding only to this person coming up to me, who, by the way, was a public safety person in another community but lives in town. And is that something that's ridiculous to go to get somebody else used vehicle because they have some kind of policy where they turn over more quickly, like a larger municipality?
Well, if the larger municipalities are getting rid of their cars, are you referring to like take some of their surplus vehicles?
Yeah.
They're already at 160, 140,000 miles, other municipalities.
So it's dumb.
Yes. I won't say it's dumb. I don't want to say that, but I think if you were to go used, and then you have to upfit these vehicles too with your insignias, your equipment. So there's some additional expenses.
One nightmare for another nightmare.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Does the town have any kind of vehicle replacement plan?
We're working on it.
Are they currently, are they just capital?
Yeah.
So alternative funding sources. So with the merger with Easthampton, with the communications merger with the 911 system, our communications, we received it last year, $175,000. We'll receive another $175,000 this year. I should say the following year, fiscal year 26, as well as fiscal year 27. And then from that point forward, the state will only pay 50, 25, and then 0. So, no, it's 6. So it's actually 75, 50, and then 25, 0. So that is some alternative. That's put into the grant every year in the development grant. We applied for a road safety grant that's for this fiscal year, but it does extend into July and August. And this grant includes essentially their traffic safety campaigns, but it also includes equipment. So one of the equipment that we asked for was a solar speed sign that we can place, as well as a portable breathalyzer that we needed. One broke. So that's what that's where that money will go to. We also, with this development grant, for the next grant, we asked for a voice over internet protocol phone system. It's the same phone system that the town hall here has, so we'll be able to interconnect with them. And the reason for this is so Easthampton will have it as well, And so all of our calls, if somebody calls our business line, it'll automatically go right to Easthampton. There's no interruption. And then they can just transfer the phone calls from there. So there's no interruption it's a direct call rather. So that's important for public safety. It reduces time to reach a dispatcher. So we have that, and that will, so we're aware of the indirect cost to that, or the continual costs would be about $2,200. That's for both the fire department and the police department a year. That's not budgeted because that grant hasn't been approved, but that particular part of the grant. But it's about $2,200 for fees a year. With, I think the town is, you have, how many, you know what you pay monthly for your voice over internet protocol?
Not offhand.
Yeah, I think it's around the same. I think it's around $184 a month. That's what we are. That's for the, so it'll increase those continual costs, but it's very important that we get that, because what we're finding is, I'll give you an example. The fire department has a phone line. It's the 1700 phone line. Oftentimes the fire department's not staffed. Somebody will actually call that for an emergency. And if they call that for an emergency, that number is good. They're going to get an answering machine when they're not there. Mm-hmm. So that phone number will automatically just go directly to Easthampton Dispatch, and that's what's going to happen with all our phone lines.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that would be under the road safety grant?
No, I'm sorry, that's under the development grant.
Under that one. Okay.
So I just provided them with a quote last week, so we could mm-hmm. hopefully the state 911 department approves it. I think they would, because it does improve the dispatching. Mm-hmm. It makes it more efficient. Highlights and challenges. Highlights, I have to say, this is the first year in the 5 years that we've had a full staff. So that's great, that's a highlight. Challenges, the attrition of part-time officers. Okay, the budget planning process. My process, I've done zero-based budgeting since I've been a chief, and I'm very, very, I detail minutia. I'm sorry that you have to put you through this, but I have a budget. I want to make sure everyone.
You didn't like this budget?
No, I do, but I want to make sure everyone understands where it's coming from. I don't want anybody to say, "Hey, something doesn't make sense here," right? So, so some of our fixed costs, I can employee-based salaries, I can nail that. Vendor contractual agreements, I can nail that. No issues. Certain additional wages, shift differential. That's when an officer works evening shift, they get a $1.25 extra an hour. Weekend differential, if they work the weekends, it's another $1 an hour. That's all contractual. That's stuff that's a fixed cost. Certain expenses, firearms qualifications, annual fees for memberships and so forth. The variable ones are tricky. The overtime, part-time wages, cruiser maintenance, and IT expenses. That's just some of them, and I'll explain in more detail. So right here, so this is how I determine full-time police officer salary computations. And if you look at this, you'll see that this is for one particular officer, and there's two columns. The reason why there's two columns is because there is step increases. This particular officer here doesn't have a step increase, but for a certain time of the year, they might be under one pay step, but then they increase to another pay step. And that all calculates to what that officer's base salary, and if that officer has an education, a master's or a bachelor's, they get a 10% increase in their pay. And that's what that is there. So that's how I get every officer's annual salary. And it's very, very specific, right down to, so for instance, this would be, I can actually show you one that has a,
Everybody see that okay?
Didn't come up here, hold on. Well, for some reason my link is not working. Didn't come up. But I can show you a little bit later, but the link didn't work. Now I lost my, okay, let's go back. Okay, so that's how I come up. It includes their, you can see here, this will include their vacation days, their everything's inclusive, right down to their roll call. So I can nail the officer's salaries down pretty close. And I do that for all 11 all 12 full-time officers. So for part-time officers, this is how I developed this. And my mouse is not showing up. But in the first column, for instance, I've allocated, like I said earlier, 1,100 hours towards part-time shift wages. And that's decreased by about 100 from last year. And open weekend shifts, so it's about, I allocated 576 hours to that. All those, the hours for professional development, we do it online now, so there's no hours for that. They'll do it during their shift. Firearms training, those are requirements. They have to have, that's about 48 hours. Every officer has to have that. Taser training, they have to have that. Semi-annual staff meetings, I try to do them if I can, if I have the money to do it. Polls and elections, previously I had these columns filled, but because I don't have any part-time available, I don't fill them. So roll call, that's when they come in early, they get $1.25, they get 15 minutes extra in their pay for coming in at quarter of their shift time. That's all contractual. Professional development, firearms instructor, so our firearms instructor is a part-time firearms, he's our part-time officer, but he's our firearms instructor, he's our lead instructor, so he has to go to professional development. I put 400 hours allocated toward vacation coverage, and another holiday coverage cover is 124 hours. The 576, 124, and 400 is at 1,100 hours, and that's where I place them, okay? So if you look at the corner on the left, it's hard to see based on where we're at here, but if you look at the totals, there is, with all the full-time accruals, it is, it shows.
Can you zoom on that? I don't know if you can, maybe not.
Let me see.
Maybe not.
What it is I wish I had,
You're looking under the 602 vacation hours, is that?
Yep, so, nope, so you have there's a total of 560 personal hours of time for the officers, 400 hours of sick time, 576 hours of paid holidays. So if they don't work on holiday, they still get paid regular rate on the holiday. So instead of 40 hours of pay, they get 48 hours of pay. And then I believe that is 1,952 hours of vacation time. Mm-hmm. So if you look underneath that, it says approximately 602 vacation hours will not be backfilled, leaving 1,350 hours filled by overtime and part-time. And that goes to your question, we're not backfilling anybody. So if I have, if there's three officers working on a shift and they go out, call out sick, or they go on vacation or use personal time, we don't backfill that. We as long as we have two officers on, that's how we keep it. 232 personal hours will not be backfilled, and 167 sick day hours won't be backfilled, and that's all through calculations. And I can show you the data on that later on as we proceed. These are some additional wages. So officers paid to officers, holiday hours paid to officers not working the holiday. That's what I was referring to. So when you have a full-time officer and he's not working, that's an additional $18,470. And shift differential pay, that is, again, they for every shift that they work, for every hour that they work, on a 4 to 12 or a midnight to 8, the 4 to 12 they get $1.25 an extra an hour, and $1.50 on the midnight shift. That's all contractual. The officer in charge is a 5% increase, so if there's not a supervisor working and it's a patrol officer, contractually they get a 5% increase in their hourly rate. And so whenever there's an officer in charge based on fiscal year 24 and 25, that was 215 hours of OIC. So that equates to that number there. Field training officer, same thing. Whenever there's an officer training another newer officer, and this is based on previous years, fiscal year 24 and 25, there was 41 total hours, and it's a 7% increase in their pay rate. Our police administrative assistant is currently at with her new increase would be about 27,144, and then these are the weekend shift differentials. So here's our overtime wages. So because we had 1,200 hours of part-time last fiscal year, but I reduced it by 100 to 1,100. That's going to increase overtime hours because that somebody has to work the shift. And vacation coverage, vacation coverage is 950 hours. Would be covered by full-time. Sick time 233, personal time 328, holiday cover. So when they're working a holiday, they also get overtime working the holiday. So that's important. That's why there's that number there. And there's court if they have to go to court for any reason on their time off. That's an additional. So the average is about 28 hours a year, not too much. First responder training is about 28 hours total. This is for all the full-time officers. And I have 7 officers versus 11 is because the officers are working. So if they're getting trained on their shift, they're obviously not getting the overtime. School lockdown drills trainings. If we scheduled 2, again it's 7 officers because there's going to be 2 officers or 3 officers working that time. We don't need an entire staff at the trainings. Firearms training. Same thing, 8 officers because usually it's during the day and it's during a weekday. So myself and my lieutenant as well as a patrol officer would be working. So that's why it's only 8 officers. Taser training, these are all required trainings that we have. This is not something that we are requesting or asking. In order to maintain a taser, you have to have this training. In order to maintain firearms, you have to have a certain amount of training. School lockdowns are now required. Semi-annual staff meetings, I try to maintain those. I try to have those, but there are times, last year I didn't have any. I just didn't have the money. I ran out of it. Investigations, about 135 extra hours of overtime a year. This I didn't have last year, and the reason for that, I just kept on missing it every year. But we have an officer that's in the military, and we have more than one officer, but one officer that's, I'm not referring to the officer that's on the 3-year leave. But for the military obligations, he has to leave for about 40 hours a year. And that's going to have to get backfilled by overtime as well. And so that is important because I want to show you where it might be in the next slide here. Okay. For wages in particular, and that's overtime, part-time wages, and full-time regular wages. There's a 4.6% increase from fiscal year 25, and you're asking yourself, well, why is that the case? If I put a placeholder for a 2% COLA, so you ask yourself, why is there a 2.6 variance increase? And this is the explanation for that. So the COLA for regular wages would amount to about $22,582. A 2% COLA increase placeholder for allotted overtime hours is an additional $2,476. 5 officers will receive 2% step increases. So that means that we have, of our 11 full-time officers, I don't get step, obviously, but of the 11 full-time contractual officers that we have, 6 are at their top step, 5 are not. So every year when they reach a certain date, they get an additional step until they reach their top step. So that's an additional 2% step increases. So that adds to $5,936 approximately. Officer on military leave returning in April. So again, he's returning in April. That's the remainder of his salary, $12,960. I did not have to budget for that last year. So I had to bet, if he comes back in April, which I'm hoping he does, then that will be the remaining balance of his salary. And then the added 40 hours of overtime. So overtime increased by about 227 hours. Remember, 100 hours went to, because we lost that part-time because of the trending down, 100 hours plus 40 of military leave, and then some additional training that was been required. So that right there, if you add all that up, that comes to $56,843. The reduction of part-time officers, we'd reduce that by 2,395 hours, and that's why that right there is the number that comes to. And so that's why that 54,673 is a 4.6% increase. That's the explanation, okay? Did I explain that well enough? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Can't imagine the machinations you've gone through putting all this together. But you've done it so many years, I know you've got it down pat. But it's very helpful to understand your thought process.
It's important because it's a reasonable question for somebody from the finance committee to say, why, if you gave a 2% increase in COLA increase, why is it up 4.6?
Right.
And that's why.
Chief,
Yes.
the big number at the bottom,
Yep.
why does that not match the number in your,
It's $200 off. I was off just a couple.
but they will come together?
Yes, I certainly would, but that's just an explanation. I mean, $200 I'm not too particular of. But that would explain, if someone were to say, why is there such an increase? Those numbers right there, they're not to the dollar, to the penny. But that's why that you have that.
Yep.
The 2% COLA, that's just a placeholder.
Yes.
So that's just something that we put in there for budgeting reasons.
Right, and the reason for that is the contract expires on June 30th, so negotiations are going to have to occur sooner or later. Our building expenses, again, this is the minutia that I just wanted to explain here. Janitorial supplies, electric, let me get that off of there, electric, charter, spectrum, oil, gas, and electric, fire extinguisher inspection, that's for insurance, we have to get that done, refills, general supplies and incidentals, generator maintenance, water department, septic service. Again, I haven't been able to do septic service because I've run out of money. Furnace service, what we do is we just put new filters in, the custodian puts new filters in for us. Water coolers for fresh water, and then that's the monthly fee for our water cooler. Professional development, my in-service to include my hotel stay because it's in Norwood, and the training, so that's about $1,300. Officer in-service, we're doing it online now. Officer professional development, this is where I want to start getting officers into training. This is part of that succession plan. Uniform allowance, that's those numbers right there. For full-time, it's $1,000 a year per officer. That's contractual. EMT research classes, we have 4 officers that are EMTs. And so we pay for their research classes. Firearms qualifications. So we have to qualify in our pistol, we have to qualify in our rifle, and we have to qualify in what is considered a less lethal, which is basically a beanbag. In order to maintain any of that equipment, you have to have this training. It's pursuant to Mass Code of Regulations. Taser qualifications, the same thing. You have to have 2. We do that once a year. They have to do 2 cartridges, shoot 2 cartridges. So that's a qualification. Food reimbursements. So if they go to classes, they get a $20 reimbursement, $600. And RAD membership, we have 1 officer that's a RAD. And that's somebody that teaches people rape defense. We maintain that in the event that we can support that program.
Have you offered classes in town?
No, we have not offered that class, no.
The taser qualifications, how do you get 17 officers? 17 officers, is that?
Yes, yeah. So if we were to hire new officers, so new hires have to be trained. So you have 12 full-time to include myself. And if we were to have 5 part-time officers, or we have to replace an officer, it's about 17.
Do officers only have to be tased once?
They don't have to be, that's not a requirement any longer, no. So they don't have to ride the lightning.
Are you volunteering, Brad?
It's actually an option, but nobody's raised their hand to say they want to do it. But it is a life-saving, that's a life-saving device. It really is. So I know we make fun of it, but when we've had circumstances where we'd had to draw the taser, and I'll give you an example. Somebody came out of nowhere with a shovel and went right at us with a shovel and was going to strike us with a shovel until the officer that was closest drew the taser, and that person recognized the taser and dropped the shovel. If we didn't have tasers, that officer would have drew his firearm.
So it never got tased?
Nope, just the sight of it. just the sight of it.
Somebody will have to tell me what it looks like.
But the importance of that is if we didn't have the taser, the officer would have drew his firearm because that's potential deadly
That's
force.
right, sure.
This is just an explanation of some of how expensive these qualifications are. That's where that comes from. That's where Scott, does the finance committee have the worksheets that we provide, that I provided? Do they have access to those or no? That are in the general, that we submit to you? Okay, all right.
Those aren't, no.
All right. But this is part of it. That just explains why it's so expensive and how much we need for each qualification. Vehicle maintenance, cruiser fuel. Based on fiscal year 25, it's been about $2,500 a month. So if we're going to go on the current prices of fuel, it's going to be about $30,420. Repairs, I'm hoping I don't have to install another transmission, so I did increase repairs to about $9,500. I didn't, I'm hoping that I get a cruiser, but I want a little bit more of a buffer in case I do have to replace some significant drivetrain issues. Cruiser oil maintenance, it's about $71.42 an oil change. It's been that way for a couple of years. We do about 2.5 changes per vehicle for 7 vehicles.
Do you bring it to it?
Yes. Yep.
You don't do it yourselves?
We certain cars we do, an officer will do it, but we also bring it. It averages when we bring it to the officer doesn't have to do it. He does it by choice. I couldn't make him do it, but he does it by choice. So if he said, you know what, I can't do this anymore, I don't want to do it, it's $71.42 per oil change. Fleet inspections, that's standard. Cruiser tires, it's about $850 a car for all 4 replacements. Turnpike fees, we're averaging about $65. And radar calibrations, what that means is our radar units in our cars, they have to get calibrated every year in order to use those to stop vehicles. Because if we stopped a car based on speed and we didn't have the radars calibrated, it could bring up a defense for if something were to come out of that car or that motor vehicle stop. Police technology, DTS scheduling. So since we merged with Easthampton, we had our dispatchers doing all of our scheduling. We don't have that option anymore. So the DTS scheduling is an automated scheduling. It schedules for details. It schedules for our shifts. So that's something that was new to our department since we merged. The data plan for 6 cruiser MDTs, those are the mobile data terminals, the computers in the cruisers, so that's the data plan for them. We have 4 cell phones. The reason why we have cell phones now is we have, I have 1. We have 2 for the officers on patrol and 1 additional for our detective. You don't want to use personal cell phones for cases because it can be discovered. It could be used for discovering. You never want to expose your own personal information if it were to get required to be discoverable. Communications, this is incidents due to regionalization. So if something were to happen to any of our radios or something that in the Easthampton dispatch that Southampton owns, that's $2,000 that we can attribute towards that. For instance, we have a monitor in there when they monitor our lobby, right? So if that monitor were to break, we're required to pay for that, stuff like that. Our CAD and police records contract, so that is our computer-aided dispatch. That's our records. That's how we keep our records. We've had this same system for about since 1999. The annual fee with a 2% increase is about $16,534. We are going to try, if it's something that we can afford, we are going to try to have the same CAD system as Easthampton, because it's not practical for the dispatchers over there to use 2 different CAD systems. Currently, they have the same CAD system, but they are transferring to their new CAD system within the next couple months. And the downside of that is every time they hire a new dispatcher, they're going to have to train that dispatcher 2 different CAD systems. That could increase our annual fees. That's where I actually have a meeting the first week of March to get a quote. This CAD system will be paid through the development grant, that state 911 development grant. But again, you have those continual costs for the fees. And I don't know what that's gonna be yet. I have to wait until the first week of March. And our copier lease. That's our copier lease, so that's
Chief, on the
Yes.
switch of the CAD software,
Yep.
is there a potential to license that through Easthampton to kind of get some efficiency, some economy of
So
scale?
it would be. So it would be a continuation of them. The only thing is important is that we want to ensure that our system is distinct from theirs. We don't,
Okay.
because of confidentiality, we don't want to integrate our system with them, because we're a different police department.
Understood.
But yes, it would be, the quote hopefully would be lessened because there's gonna be more terminals and the actual cost. So for instance, this fee is based on, I think, 12 users and 4 cruisers, right? So if Easthampton is, 3 times the size of Southampton, it could be 36 users in Easthampton, and let's say 12 cruisers, or however many cruisers, we might be able to get a reduced fee as a result of that, because we're using the same system. That's what we're hoping for. That's all the stuff I have to discover in this meeting.
Is there a training cost for that shift? Are all of your officers going to need to be retrained?
They will be, yep. I just can't put it into the budget yet because I don't know if it's gonna be practical. I mean, if our maintenance fees cost, $30,000, then we just might not be able to do it. That's something that I have to just discuss more with the board and Scott and the finance committee. Department expenses. So where you see nothing there, it's because I hopefully don't have to hire a brand new recruit. Full-time academy tuition, that goes with the new recruit. Equipment for full-time academy new recruit, so that's nothing. Medical equipment, it's about $500 a year. Ballistic vests, so if we hire a police officer, it's about $1,000 a vest. So, if we lose an officer, we have to hire somebody. We have to get a fitted vest for that person. We can't give them an old vest. We apply for a reimbursement grant. It's a 50% reimbursement grant through the federal government, but we have to pay the $1,000 outright for each vest. Crime scene processing equipment and materials were sufficiently supplied. New employee psych test. So if we hire 2 employees, again, we have to do a psych test on them. So they're $500 a piece. Every year, we have to go through about 5 identification cards with either new officers or expired identification cards. Those are required by state. It's a state, we don't make those ID cards. Post office fee, post office box fee, we have that $100. Language link, that's a $100 fee, so that is in case we have somebody that is speaking of another language, we can contact Language Link and they will translate for us. That's been very helpful in the past. As you know, we have a lot of Spanish-speaking people in town. We have a lot of people that speak many different foreign languages. We have a Turkish community, so that's been very helpful. Our labor law poster, it's $100. Meal pay is this: when somebody is required to work, if they're forced to work or anything over 4 hours after the regular shift, they get $10 an hour extra in their pay. It's called meal pay. That's contractual. We average about $1,670 a month. WEMLAC fees, that's for a regional radio system. That's called Western Massachusetts Law Enforcement Council. That's for a radio system where we can actually communicate with other departments that don't have the same frequency as us. Western Mass Chiefs Association, these are all just fees. So those are all associations that the police department is associated with. Expenses continued. The copier paper, about $270. Color toner, $300 a year. Black toner, $440. Media storage, this is right down to the 2 terabyte solid state drives that we have to have our detective needs, right down to 100 pack of CDs where we transfer videos to the DA's office, labels, folders, office incidentals, 200, new employee medical evaluations, we don't need those unless they're going into we support them through the full-time academy. And our agreement contract, that's the Criminal History Systems Board. That's a requirement. That's so we can run plates, we can get people's criminal history. That's a fee that we have to pay the state every year. Equipment maintenance, radio consoles, that went up dramatically. I'm gonna try to reduce that, but as of right now, it was $3,200. It went up about over $6,000, about $6,000, because our 5-year, we had a, 5 years ago, we had a new radio console installed, and part of that installation was 5 years of no maintenance. And it just expired on December 31st. So I was hit with a $3,600 bill unexpectedly that I have to come up with money for. But that's why that's increased significantly. All traffic solutions, that is where we have those signboards, the electronic signboards, and our radar signs. That's where we get the data, or we can program them. That's how much it costs a year for that. Taser subscription plan we don't need. Fingerprint scanner contract not necessary. This is new. Mount Tom repeater contract. So we had a repeater previously that was on Mount Tom, but it was not maintained. It was very difficult to go to, and it would often with this past snowstorm, we would have been out of radio service for several hours, if not 24 hours. The Mount Tom repeater is where you see that large stack of antennas right on Mount Tom. That's maintained by Holic Gas and Electric, so there's a roadway there. In order to get to our other tower, you have to take either a snowmobile or a groomer, one of those groomers that like a ski groomer, to get up there in the snow. There's no road to it. So we transferred the fire department as well as the police department to that. The fire departments, now this is for both police and fire. Fire department's repeater was at the town hall, and they had horrible service because of the topography of town. So now that it's up there, fire department they don't have poor radio service, and we have a more consistent repeater than versus what we had. Communications expenses, so this is $175,000 a year. This gets reimbursed, but it does get budgeted.
So we're trying to put money aside to
Yes.
save for the future when we do have
Exactly.
to dip into it and pay it.
Right. And just to give you an idea, this is the same budgeting process that I've used for the several years. This is for fiscal year 25, we're in about week 32. February 8th would have been week 32. We should be at 61%. I'm at 59.38, so I'm right on the money where I'm supposed to be.
That's impressive.
Okay. This is something of an ask of
Part-time or
mine.
full-time?
This is something of an ask of mine. I want to try to incorporate more of a comfort dog versus a therapy dog. A comfort dog has less requirements. I have an officer, that's our school resource officer. He's also our veteran engagement team officer. This is his dog. It's Simba. He would like to get this dog on his own, certified as a comfort dog. I believe this is very important. We don't need a canine for other reasons. What we do need, though, is I think a comfort dog is very helpful. And he is willing to get the dog certified on his own, but if this is something that the town would entertain, here's some data that we've determined. This is the last slide. So it's based through the Alliance of Therapy Dogs membership. Insurance is through the Alliance of Therapy Dogs. Veterinary costs, incidentals, if the dog was hurt, say that he was in a cruiser and there was a cruiser crash, that's negotiable. Food, miscellaneous, cruiser alteration rather. It would be about $4,400 startup. If this is something that is I would be a proponent of this. We have It's also good for a critical stress debriefing. The officers see a lot of bad things. To have a dog at the station would be great. Again, it's a comfort dog. It's a comfort dog, so it's not a dog that's going to be, chasing people down and where it's not going to be a liability. Is I think what I'm trying to say here. It's not going to be a liability. If this is something that the town will entertain, but we can't come up with this money, then I'll ask if it would be supported if I got donations. But I just want the board to let this marinate, because I think that this would be a very good addition to our department. And that's it. Any questions?
Can I ask a comfort dog question?
Yes.
Well, there is an organization, I can't remember the full name, but the word Bright is in there. What is it, Bright? Bright something.
Is it Bright?
So it's come before the Council on Aging that they would bring in the dogs that are trained for that. And I just want to say very positive things about this. When the Board of Health heard about this, one of the people who's a member of the Board of Health, who's a physician's assistant at Coley Dickinson Emergency Room, said they use them in the emergency room to help mitigate the stress of whatever's going on, because it's usually awful stuff in the emergency room. So I have to say this is really good. But at the same time, are you saying this is one of the officers' dogs?
They own the dog. They own the dog. The dog. So what he would like to do is, if he can get that dog, if he can get that dog certified as a comfort dog, not a therapy, because commands are a little bit different for a therapy. Therapy dog is you have to give a command. They have to be able to put their head down on their. This is a dog that just comes in. You can pet the dog, and if he's willing to, if the dog meets the certification, pay for all that. But if we could incorporate the dog into our department as a comfort dog, this is what it would cost roughly.
How much is the certification?
Certification is for him to get it certified. The annual certification is $30 a year, but for him to get it certified, he basically, I've seen the dog. It's a very, very well disciplined dog. He would just get it certified on his own. So if he would get the dog certified. If it met the conditions of certification.
Do we know what that cost is for that? I mean, what does the officer have to pay to get it certified?
I don't think it's much. He has to just prove on several times a year that the dog will maintain, will abide to certain commands. That's how it was described to me.
Does the dog live at the station?
No, it would live at the officer's home.
How often would the dog be at the station?
When the officer's working.
Oh, just when the officer's working?
Yes. Or when the dog is necessary, if we call him in specifically, let's say, there's a situation that warrants the dog. Let's just say if the Council on Aging wanted to see the dog, or the school. Again, he's our school liaison. He's a certified school resource officer. It would be nice to bring a dog to school sometimes. Or if we have any situation where a traumatic event where the dog, we call the dog in and the officer in with the dog to help.
Sure.
There are situations like that where oftentimes where DCF is involved and we have to respond. To have a dog as a distraction is very helpful. DCF is Department of Children and Families.
Are the cruiser alterations similar to a canine unit?
It would be a fan and an AC unit, yes. So if the dog remained in the car on a hot day, it's just a window.
But in the future, if there was a canine unit, specifically a police dog, could you use that cruiser for that?
You could, yes. I don't have any intentions of a canine. Honestly, I shouldn't say this, but I have yet to have a successful canine respond to a call. And in fact, I've run with the canine officer to find out the dog was chasing a butterfly. So sometimes it's some are very, very good, but I have yet to have that experience. But also our calls for service and our types of call for service don't warrant a canine. We can always ask for mutual aid for that.
So at this point, this is not part of your budget?
It is not. So, this is something that I just think would be an asset to not only the department but the town. Especially if the dog, the owner's willing to get it certified on his own.
The insurance, is
Yes.
that liability insurance or is that health insurance for the dog?
No, that's liability insurance, and that comes through this Alliance of Therapy Dogs. That comes through them. I don't know if it would be, it's something that maybe perhaps we'd have to research if the town would have to incorporate additional insurance.
Under policy.
Yeah, I would assume that a canine, right, if you have, during an arrest, you have a bite, right, that's a different, liability.
Yes,
versus,
exactly.
A therapy dog at the school, someone pulls his tail.
Right, exactly, yes. So, that's it. Is there
Do you want
any?
to go through these slides at all, or not?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, just so that
Yep.
those that are watching at home know what's going on. Thank you, though, that was very, very
You touched the pencils budget?
thorough.
Yeah, I think it was hidden in the paper clips.
Yeah, you did do a minutia job.
I do. I recognize where people can say, hey, where's this coming from? Where did this amount come from? And I think it's reasonable for anybody to ask that question, and I want to be able to explain it.
Well, if you didn't do this kind of prep, as bizarre as it is, you would be spot on your budget performance.
And that's why I put that in there. It's whatever I've been doing, it
seems to be working.
Errors offset each other.
And this is the first time that we had a full staff,
Yeah.
so I've actually been able to test it.
Right. Yeah.
So I do have another question, because you mentioned that there'll be 4 of leadership positions that will be, retired out soon. So do you see the leadership roles being filled by the current staff, or do you think there's gonna have to be some recruitment and there's gonna be cost related to that? And also, do you think Southampton is a great place for police officers to work? Do you have any trouble getting people to come work here? Like we
Well, I
heard
can
from
tell you
our
this.
water department person.
I can tell you this. Our retention has a specific correlation to their pay. Because they received, the select board has supported their pay increases, and I have seen that correlation. The difficult part is, we border a city, Easthampton is one of the highest paid departments in Western Mass. So, is there a draw for our officers to go over to Easthampton where they can make a lot more money? There could be, but as of right now, we've been retaining officers. That's the drawback.
It might be partly your culture is a welcoming, supportive culture too.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I mean, out of the staff that you've got, Chief, how many are town residents? Are they,
We have
unlike our fire department, that we're relying on people from other towns?
5. Out of the full-time staff,
Hmm.
the majority are.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, that's encouraging.
The majority are, yes.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to, the lieutenant is, 1 sergeant's from Westfield, 2 sergeants are from Southampton, and then there's probably about 4 other officers from Southampton, so, yeah, the majority of it is from Southampton.
Do we have a residency requirement for the chief?
Yes, you have to live in Southampton, at least with my contract. It's not a requirement of the town, but it's part of my contract.
Yeah.
And not in the union contract?
No.
No.
Not in the union
No,
contract.
you already
No.
mentioned some of your
Right.
officers. like
Yeah.
outside.
Okay.
It's not part of the contract.
There is a as the crow flies though, right?
No,
Oh, there isn't?
there's
Yeah.
not.
What's the actual premium that Easthampton is paying? Is it?
I would just ask this, I had a meeting, a regional dispatch meeting last week, and they're hiring somebody. And they said if a full-time police officer in Easthampton has a master's degree and an EMT, their starting pay is not including overtime, is about $106,000 a year for a patrol officer.
That's a small pool. EMT plus master?
Yes. It's not when you get a 14% increase in your pay with an EMT. So they get
We'll get it.
a 14% increase in their pay. We get a 7%, they get a 14%. So, and it's not hard to get your EMT.
They have very, very much motivation to go get their EMT.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, shall we just run through this very quickly and just see what, I think we've gotten all the level of detail here, but if you've got something else that you'd like to say from how you put the sheet together, Scott?
So these are just the the permanent positions that we have, and have used the second sheet on that. So you have the officers all the way to the administrative assistant. One of the things with the grades and steps, we didn't put those in, we just put the actual numbers based on the chief's calculations, because we have to negotiate the union contract, and nothing will be finalized until we actually come to an agreement. For operating expenses, we separated, there was maybe about 2 or 3 line items. We separated this out to police technology, vehicle maintenance, professional development, so you can actually see the costs involved. The communication expenses, the $175,000 that we paid at Easthampton, which is covered by the grant. We have the $175 grant, we put that into revenue, so that will be neutral. Last year we kind of had a
Net budget.
problem, figuring out where we're going to put it. And then police equipment maintenance and expenses is pretty straightforward. One thing that we're going to have to start thinking about is the capital budget eventually. We don't have a formal capital budget or vehicle replacement plan. We have an ambulance that's getting, when the fire chief comes in, we have an ambulance that's coming up that's going to need replacement as well. Street sweeper. A few of the buildings need some significant work, especially the DPW garage. So we're going to have to kind of think about how we approach capital differently in the future. Because right now we have about $350,000 and that's not going to cover anything.
On the, just a question on the police equipment maintenance, how did that go down by nearly half?
Well, we also took out the custodial wages.
There's equipment maintenance.
Right, so vehicle maintenance was put in, I think it was vehicle maintenance was in the...
It was equipment maintenance fiscal year. Equipment maintenance in this particular fiscal year included
So before we just had the police department expenses,
because it's
police
been delineated a little bit
maintenance,
more. So
yeah.
equipment maintenance included our CAD system, copier lease, radio consoles, generator maintenance, our criminal history systems board agreement, all traffic solutions. That's that contract for $4,900. And this year, our maintenance includes, because they've been, some of these numbers have been put into other, this year it's only radio consoles, all traffic solutions, and Mount Tom repeater.
I see, okay.
So they're distributed to other line items.
Okay, got it.
So those variance numbers, because
Okay.
everything's been delineated a little bit more,
Okay,
aren't representative of past years.
got it, okay.
It's going to take 2 or 3 years to actually see the
Yeah.
progress in it.
I think at some point in time, and I seem to remember it, for some of the grants that you've gotten in the past, you've been able to get, and I don't know if it's a 911 grant or one of the others, where it's been specifically for, I think it's been for staff training, but you can use it for salaries as well. And then I think a couple times you mentioned that you hadn't actually ended up using all of it, and then the money was just turned back into the town to the general fund.
The only thing that we've had for training, and we have to, whatever we don't use, it's reimbursable. So that was through the state 911 department when we had
Okay.
dispatchers. They paid for their annual in-service training.
Uh-huh, okay.
So that was always, we would draw and then we would get reimbursed.
Reimbursed.
Yes.
But I thought there were some that you were saying that you, a couple years ago when we were talking about grants, that there were some that when the money was left over, you didn't need it. You didn't need to have it in the police department. It ended up just going back into.
There are some funds prior to me being chief where there are some leftover monies
Okay.
that were specific to something that weren't spent. So
Mhm.
that does exist, but not
Okay.
since I've been
Okay.
chief.
Maybe one of those wonderful things Bradley's trying to clean up, I think, the special revenue ones.
I just had a question on the, under the employee count, it lists 1 for the under 20 hours per week, but in the list, I don't see anybody under 20.
Yeah, that should actually be moved to, because the assistant is benefit eligible just by the employment at the police station, but she's
Yeah.
also employed by the fire station as well, so I have to move that into a permanent benefit eligible employee.
So she's doing 20 hours at each place?
Mhm.
So she's full-time?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
These are some of the programs that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, there's some up top, I guess. 26 and 27 there, lines 26, oh, there, yeah, way back up there too. Yeah, there's bits of money.
Yeah, so,
Here and
for instance,
there.
that one right there, that has to go towards police, because that's drug confiscation money. And you have to, Alec, that has to go towards, purchasing of police equipment or wages for investigation. But, for instance, Project DARE, we don't have a DARE officer right now. So, whatever is in that line item, that money was provided to us by the PTO. So,
What is this list? This is
This
extra
is
money, found money?
This is special revenue and grants, and some grants that have not been closed out. Stuff that has been around and hasn't been used in 4 or 5 years, and we're trying to figure out if it's been billed already, and then this is our reimbursement, and it just didn't get put in the correct account when it came back into our coffers, or if this is money from a grant that remained unspent that we have to turn back to the state or something.
Like Indian Meadows
Very,
Restoration.
I'm thinking few and far between on those in a way, because most of our grants are not an upfront amount. Usually, most of them are reimbursables, so.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, okay.
It's a little, it's a long list that hasn't been cleaned up in quite a while.
Sale of cemetery lot, 66,000.
Yeah, so,
I
well,
saw
but that's probably current though.
The opioid settlement money that's in there, did we decide if that was supposed to go to a separate fund, or that was on the warrant to do that or something?
Was that the cemetery lot one? I'm sure.
Oh, the opioid settlement fund.
Oh, the opioid one, yes.
We established a trust fund for that.
Yeah, we set up a separate stabilization fund for that, right? Yeah.
So, because I see 90,000 listed in there.
Where's that?
It was down towards 2023.
Yeah, just no, line 61. So maybe that is the stabilization account that we created though? Right?
No.
No, it's not?
Well, that would be the grant that money we received, but to put into a stabilization fund, I imagine we'd have to go to town meeting.
We did.
Move that money?
We did.
To establish it, but I don't think we actually moved that into it.
We approved the account. We definitely did.
But did we approve the money going into it?
I believe so.
I'll have to check.
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah, that definitely should be there. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so anyway, just to say some cleanup, so probably if you have some history on some of these police ones, I'm sure.
Scott and I, we've spoken about it.
I'm sure there'll
This
be
is going to be a topic for Thursday's meeting.
Yeah, there'll be a few to clean up, I think, yeah. So, good.
I know there's some old traffic grants in there from several years ago that, did not being used.
Yeah, and I think I'm assuming that a lot of these are not ones that we have to return the money. I mean, I think this is money that maybe got reimbursed, that we just never put it in the new pot when it came back in. That's my thinking, but hard to know. So, okay. Any further comments or questions about budget? This has been a long evening, but I think very instructive, and thank you for all your
Well, I thank
hard
you for
work about
having me,
putting
and thank you
this.
for tolerating my, my minutia.
Now, the real question is, how are you going to train somebody else to do this? Exactly.
When
so.
you retire, you're going to join the finance committee.
Yeah, right. All right, so we have,
As long as I don't have to.
I think that's the end of our agenda. We have another meeting
You used to
on
hold the
the,
spreadsheeting at Crown, but.
we have another meeting on the
I see somebody did some
25th.
competition.
Oh, I can't, he's so much
No,
more
yeah.
advanced than I am in that.
All right, so February 25th, we'll be back here for another round, and this will be basically purely budget this time, I think. Okay. Yeah, there might be one item or something on the agenda, but not much. It'll be basically budget focused. And yeah, as long as you guys call your meeting, I mean, all three of you can certainly call if you post your meetings.
Today.
Okay, all right, well, that's fine. All right.
Post the next.
Feel free to take a whole stack of, does anybody see Reggie, so you can take a stack of the school budget papers for him?
Are you a committee of five?
That's all.
Yeah,
That's
they're all
all.
on the FY20, on the budget thing, except
Yeah.
for this. This
Yeah.
actually don't work.
And then Donna sign.
Yeah, right. So-
I remember when you were
Okay.
5.
All right, let's finish up here. Any final details?
Oh, that's different.
All right, if not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right, we are adjourned at about almost 9:30.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.